Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Irish Breakdown Podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Happy Wednesday. You guys know what that means. It is the midweek rundown where we're going to be covering a host of different topics today. We're going to be talking about why Notre Dame is allegedly the most hated team in college football, according to some. We're going to be diving into the stars on the Notre Dame offense, or rather who we believe is going to be the stars on Notre Dame's offense. We're going to be doing the defense next week. Part 3 of today's show, we're going to be talking about some D-line recruiting, names to know on the edge and along the interior. And then part 4 of today's show, which I'm actually really fascinated to dive into, I know Brian is as well, it's the TV rights deal and pooling rights, and it's the SEC and the Big Ten versus everybody. And we're going to talk down to what all is going into this, what's the current argument for some of these things, what's the argument for change. So, man, it's going to be a great show today, Brian.
It is. I'm very much looking forward to it. A lot of interesting topics today, Trev. There's no doubt about it. We're sitting here in the middle of February. We're actually beginning of March now. I said in the middle of February. What am I talking about? Early March. We're 16 days away from the start of fall or spring practice. I am in a hot mess today, Trev. We're going to talk about a lot of different topics. Obviously, we've got some college football topics. We've got Notre Dame topics. We've got some recruiting topics as we start to get to that period of time where talking about recruiting makes a little bit more sense to talk about it now. It's kind of pointless in January and most of February, but we're getting into that point now where it means more guys are going to start visiting here in March and April. And so we're going to start doing more of that. We talked quarterbacks this week. And so we're going to go we went with the number one premium position on offense last week. Now this week, we're going with the number one premium position on defense, and that's the defensive line. So we're going to talk a little defensive line recruiting today, and then watch some film. And then also, Trev, the part I'm looking forward to is we're going to have a star power conversation. Looking into the spring, who are the stars for the Notre Dame offense? We all think we know who the stars are going to be, but here's the reality. Notre Dame had arguably 1 to 3 star players last year, in my opinion. Maybe 4. The only one that comes back that's a maybe in that conversation is CJ Carr. The others, Jeremiah Love, the bona fide, Jadarian Price. I think you can make a case when he was on the field, he was a star. May not have had star attention, but star impact. Same with Malachi Field. So we're going to have that conversation today, Trev. Who is going to have the star? What's the star power going to be? Because I don't think you can win a title without star power, and especially in a 12-team playoff. So we're going to have that conversation today too, Trev. But we're going to kick things off with Josh Pate, and he's a polarizing figure now, and I respect the hustle he had coming up in the business and what he tried to do. I think I've been a little disappointed by what I've seen from him the last year or two as he gets more towards the ESPN and the On3 type of things, but it is what it is. But he had a thing come out where I guess they did a poll. And who is the number one most hated team in college football, Trev? And at the top of the list was the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. So let's talk about it.
Yeah, man, look, before we dive into what the poll is and why we believe that to be, with all due respect to Josh Pate or anybody else that puts out a poll like this, I didn't need a poll to tell me that the most hated team in college football right now is Notre Dame.
My DMs and mentions let me know that.
Yes. Yeah, I woke up today. That's what told me that Notre Dame is the most hated team in college football right now.
I put something out the other day where I was talking about Jeremiah Love, and he's talking about I didn't go to school for money, and I just said, I love this kid. He didn't go to school for money. And some Alabama fan, that triggered some Alabama fan. And I'm like, why does this? I had this really like snarky response, and I just, you know what? I just copied it all. I didn't post it yet, but I just deleted the tweet, hit his reply, banned him, and I'm just like, this is just my new thing now with these crazy fans. Like, how did this post, which is just talking about how much I respect Jeremiah Love, how did this trigger you as an Alabama fan? What did it having to do with you as an Alabama fan? 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, never would have happened. Bama fan, if he would have even seen it, might have been like, you know what, man? Yeah, it's a pretty cool story. Now, it's like, no, you talked about Notre Dame. I hate Notre Dame, and everything associated with it. I found that very fascinating, Trev. It has changed quite. It's ramped up quite a bit the last couple years. It really has, Trev.
Yeah, it's a good thing all these people aren't charging Notre Dame rent for how many mines they're living in right now for free.
Oh my gosh.
Nuts. It's absolutely nuts. But let's talk about the why behind it. And yes, it's funny to joke about, but in all seriousness, Notre Dame has worked its way up, and a lot of people are talking about Notre Dame. You got people like us who talk about it in the good light, talk about this is why they're independent. This is why they do this. This is how we believe their season's going to go. Then on the flip side, you have a very loud demographic of people who love to hate on Notre Dame. We've talked about some of the issues on the show before, Brian, but let's really dive into the why Notre Dame is the number one hated team.
Well, I want to first, Trev, I want to kind of look through the list and get your first thoughts. I did kind of want to get your thoughts on this before we go into this, because I was curious how you felt about this. But you had Notre Dame number one. Obviously, that was a big one. And then I'm going through the rest of his list. He has Bama 2, Texas 3, LSU 4, Miami 5, SEC 6, USC 6, Michigan 7, and Ohio State 8. Overall list, what were your thoughts on the overall list? My first takeaway was people hate USC. Really? Did he pull a bunch of UCLA fans? Like, who even cares enough about USC to hate them? I was genuinely surprised by that. Did he pull a bunch of Oklahoma fans? You know, like, it was a very wild kind of response. I wasn't sure about that one. I wasn't sure.
Well, we know that Notre Dame is one of the largest fan bases in college football. Maybe they just pulled a lot of Notre Dame fans for the USC conversation. Who knows?
But, like, do Notre Dame fans hate USC? I don't hate USC. Like,
I do.
I want to kick their butt every year, but I don't hate them. I hate Michigan. I just found that was interesting. And I also thought, if this poll would have been taken 2 years ago, I'd be shocked if Michigan was 7. Yeah. They would have had to be near the top of the list. I also thought, I didn't realize LSU was a hated team. That one surprised me. I never thought of LSU as a hated team. I've never hated LSU except until Brian Kelly went there. And I still didn't hate LSU. I disliked Brian Kelly. That one surprised me a little bit as well.
Yeah, overall, I think this list is pretty solid, and I understand why. I get why Notre Dame's number one, like we're going to dive into. For Alabama, sometimes it's kind of the lag effect. It's kind of like when people were just upset to see the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl again this past year. They have been relevant in Lord knows how long, really since Tom Brady left. But it's just the name, it's the logo, it's everything about the organization. I think Alabama is still catching a little bit of the lag effect from, kind of being the villains of college football for so long.
Yeah, the jealous factor.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, isn't that kind of what a lot of this is?
Oh,
it's it's a jealous. Anyway, but yeah. So let's dive into this, Trev. Let's talk about this ranking system, because I'll have some more things to say about it as we dive more into it. But Notre Dame sits at the top ahead of Alabama. They've finally taken over Alabama. I would imagine Alabama was at the top or near the top for a long time, ever since Saban started dominating. Notre Dame's number one. Let's get into the reasons why Josh said that. He explained it on his show. You said you watched it, and you said he explained on his show why Notre Dame was number one.
Yeah, I watched the clip of him diving into why Notre Dame was the number one team, and he went on to say, it's like, this isn't me, this is my ranking. So before people want to jump on him in the chat, this wasn't Josh Pate's most hated team. It was people that he polled. Okay, so basically he said he split it into two different demographics. The first demographic he talked about was like the younger high school to college kids, and about how they hated Notre Dame's response to being snubbed from the playoffs. And really, it was their decision to sit out of the bowl game. They said a program of that magnitude, albeit it's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. People acting like they sat out of the Rose Bowl. But, yeah, they said a program of that magnitude, by and large, it was a 5-to-1 ratio that said that Notre Dame, their overreaction was worse than the playoff snub. That was the younger generation's poll. And then the older generations, it's a lot of what we talked about on the show, of this show already, about being independent, not being in a conference. They get their own rules, like they can bend the rules, all that.
So basically that they hate Notre Dame because of how they've been lied to about Notre Dame by people like Josh Pate forever. basically, right? That they get their own rules. Because why? Because morons on ESPN and people like Josh Pate say that. I'm not calling Josh a moron. I'm saying people at ESPN are morons, and then I'm saying Josh Pate also. It's like what I said in the debate that I had last week. What rule, and I've asked this before, and nobody will answer, what rule does Notre Dame get an exception for to be independent? What's the carve-out that Notre Dame got that allows them to be independent that prevents everyone else from being so as well? What's the carve-out that Notre Dame and UConn have that allows them to be independent? What rule are they breaking, or what rule do they need to get relaxed to be independent? No, this is something that there's been a media campaign against Notre Dame, led largely first by Big Ten people, because they tried to – the Big Ten's approach under Jim Delaney was try to shame Notre Dame into playing in the Big Ten, and that didn't go very well. And then people in the South are just, they've never been super high on Notre Dame unless you're, Catholic. And so there's this ignorance about why Notre Dame is independent that I just don't think a lot of people understand. So, okay, yeah, you guys are kind of to blame for this about why there is. I'm sorry. I have a hard time believing that Notre Dame went from like outside of the top 8 to number 1 because young people are upset that Notre Dame didn't play in the bowl game. And if they are upset, why are they upset? It's because of y'all. Because of how you guys handled this whole thing, because of how you guys commented on it, because you guys were unwilling to say they got screwed and Alabama shouldn't have been in, and you didn't speak truth to it because you know where your bread is buttered. Go look at TV ratings for SEC games. You know where the big fan bases are. You know the people that dislike Notre Dame. You guys played to that. So it's like, I mean, let's be real. There's a lot of people now that are a lot easier to mold by podcasters than there used to be. You know what I mean? Like, let's be real about that, Trev. So you guys are the ones that went out and ran your mouths about, Notre Dame doesn't belong this, the conference that, they don't belong this here. You guys built up a lot of this anti-Notre Dame negativity. Then when Notre Dame sat out, you guys wanted to be like, oh, I can't believe they're sitting out. And why were they mad that Notre Dame sat out? Can we be real about that too? Why were they mad that Notre Dame sat out? Because they wanted to spend the next month talking about the Notre Dame BYU game. They wanted to advertise on how these are the two teams that got screwed over. And if Notre Dame dominated in the bowl game, they can be like, see, that's why they belonged. And if they get beat, they're like, see, that's why they didn't belong. They took your content away. And if anybody's going to be mad about that, it should be me. Since I think we're about the only Notre Dame show that goes live every single day, and we didn't have a bowl game to prepare for in the month of December. You know what I mean? So, like, a lot of this is you guys. There's another layer to this too, Trev, and people are not going to like this. But I'm going to say it anyway. I believe for several years now, decade plus, there has been, some of y'all aren't going to like this. This is going to get into cultural. So if you don't want to hear cultural opinions, then check out now. But the reason that I think young high school and college age men are reacting this way, not all of them, but some, is because it's been a little longer than that, because I can remember some stuff that was happening in college, but it's impacting young people even more now. Young men are basically being taught that you are the problem. All the things in our society that are going wrong, it's because of men, right? We fight wars because of men, which is an absolutely insane thing to say. Men are this, men are that, and then when men check out, it's, well, now you're to blame for checking out. You're sexual predators, you're masculine, toxic masculinity. So then young boys say, I'm out. I'm not going to talk to girls because if I say the wrong thing, I'm going to get me too'd and I'm out of here. So then they check out. And sadly, there's a portion of the men, young men, who are going in a very scary, dangerous direction where they're becoming sort of anti things. And that's why you're seeing the rise of certain podcasters that have become popular, and they're appealing to that group of young men that feel why are we being blamed for everything? And this isn't just white men, this is men in general. Right. So you've got this group of young men who've been conditioned to just take the insults, take it. You know, you're not supposed to speak out against this. You're not supposed to push back against this. You're not supposed to you're just supposed to take it because that's toxic masculinity. And you see that a lot more in young men because they've been conditioned since elementary school to say, you're what ails everything else. You're why these people are in danger. You're why these people are in danger. So then when young men get older, some of these young men, they see somebody fight back and they're like, whoa, what are you doing? You're just supposed to take it. And the fact that Notre Dame kind of did this to the college football, they don't like that. And that also speaks to why they don't like Notre Dame's independent. Why are you bucking the system? We're not supposed to buck the system. Didn't you know that? We're supposed to just take it. And that's why you see less questioning. Right? Like that's why you see people, just a podcaster says something and you just believe it, as opposed to like, well, hold on a second, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't sound right. Or to take the old saying that I heard when I was a kid, trust but verify. So you have this mindset from young men where you're supposed to go along to get along. And Trev, you and I talked about this before the show, and I wanted to say this to you because you are in that age group. You're just outside of it. You know, it's like the college, but you're in your 20s. That's what I see. And so when somebody bucks a system, which Notre Dame did, and then the system attacks, which is what they did, then these young men, to me, these young people are going to be far more susceptible to the Notre Dame's bad. They are trying to be different. They're trying to be independent. They're trying to say they're better than you. They're trying to say this. And they respond to that very aggressively because they've been conditioned to just take it. And I'm glad Notre Dame isn't. And that's one of the things I like about Notre Dame, to be honest with you. I wish they would do that in more areas, to be honest with you. But that's why I think the young people especially were so triggered by the Notre Dame sitting out the bowl game thing, as if they're the first team to sit out a bowl game. I'll bet you there's fans of Florida State that are indignant that Notre Dame sat out a bowl game because they don't realize Florida State chose not to play in a bowl game. They took themselves out of consideration because they were eligible because there weren't enough. They could have played in one, even though they were 5-7, because there weren't enough eligible 6-6 teams to play in a bowl game this year. So there's like 14 teams that I think sat out bowl games this year. And so I won't get into what needs to change culturally because that's not my thing, but I think that's driving a lot of why young men were very susceptible to the argument that I hate Notre Dame because they bucked the system. That's my 2 cents, Trev. What are your thoughts on Notre Dame being number one and why you think that is?
I mean, it's a lot. Unfortunately, it's not just one thing. It definitely depends demographic to demographic. I've gone on record to say, like, I think a big part of it is just I believe this because my dad believed it, and because his dad believed it, and because his dad believed it. And like, I mean, you see that in politics, you see that in sports. I mean, that's why I'm a Notre Dame fan. I mean, I grew up 35 minutes away from Notre Dame. I didn't go there, but I'm a Notre Dame fan because my dad was a Notre Dame fan, because his dad was a Notre Dame fan. And so that gets passed down whether you love them or you hate them. Like, that's kind of at its nucleus. That is why the saying, you either love Notre Dame or you hate them. It's kind of why. Yeah, I think with the younger generation, a lot of it is just what consumable content can you have? What is the easiest route that you can take to formulate an opinion? And it's listening to a podcaster like a Josh Pate or like a Joel Klatt, or listening to Stephen A. Smith because they see them on TV, they see him on X, they see him on Instagram, Facebook Reels, and all these different things. And that's the easiest way, is because they don't have to put in the effort to formulate an opinion. That, to me, is how I view what the younger generation views it as, which stinks for me because I always get lumped into it because I'm younger than a lot of the demographic in the Irish Breakdown community, but I'm also not 22. I think that's what stinks. Is like, I'll be 29 later this year. I was done with college like 8 years ago. I mean, people have started high school and graduated college in the time that I've been done. But because I'm just not 50, it's like Yeah, he's a part of that generation. Not saying you're saying that or anybody specifically in the chat has said that, but that by and large is something that people my age group have had to do. It's like you're just like those young kids, and it's like I'm telling you, I'm not. like you're.
But see, I think you are in that generation. The reason you don't think you are is because you think differently. You know what I mean? Like people may not know this if you don't know. Trev's a bit of a young guy trapped in an old guy's soul, right? Like, there's certain a lot of things culturally that you're young. I mean, when you were explaining the phrase for bucks, what'd you get them? The gotcha day or what was it?
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard that before. And we've got, that's all the kind, I've never heard that before. So like, you're still part of that generation, some of the words you say, but you've got a bit of an older soul, which I appreciate and why I think you and I get along very well, because I don't hang out with a lot of 20-year-olds. Like you don't hang around with a lot of almost 50-year-olds. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think that there's definitely a part of the conditioning aspect that you mentioned for Notre Dame. But I think there's a reason that the bowl thing was so popular amongst younger people as opposed to the older people. And I thought that was fascinating. But it goes back to, like, you guys are the ones that made this an issue. And it's funny how people twist and turn certain things. And I we'll have a conversation one of these days. But, I was having a conversation with somebody one time about, players sitting out games. And he started to make it a conversation that was leaning in a direction of who's responsible, and what those responsible look like. You know what I'm saying? Like, not me. And I'm like, do you remember who the first player that sat out a bowl game was? No, like Christian McCaffrey. Like, that was the first guy that sat out a bowl game. It was Christian McCaffrey. Yeah. And then he got real silent. I just think because people follow the crowd more than I would like.
100%.
And some of that I understand. But, and then you get on Twitter and you see all these people up in arms about it. Like, oh, this is something I should be upset about, because everybody else is upset about it. So I think it's great. I think there's another reason why that people aren't admitting. Can we dive into the real reason why some of these people are mad? Some of it is genuinely, Trev, like you said. I grew up a fan of Michigan. My dad's a Michigan fan. My grandpa's a Michigan fan. His grandpa's a Michigan fan. We all hate Notre Dame, right? Or I grew up an Ohio State fan. I grew up, my dad's because my dad because of his dad, and that's why we hate Michigan, and that's why we hate Notre Dame, or whatever. I grew up and my dad went to Auburn. His dad went to Auburn. That's why we hate Alabama. There's always some of that. And it would be disingenuous to say otherwise. You know what I mean? Like, why else would a kid that grew up in Northwest Ohio be a fan of the Boston Celtics? It's because my dad was. You know what I mean? Like, that's why. Why was I such a huge Larry Bird fan at the age of 6? Because my dad was. You know what I mean? Like, I can't appreciate Larry Bird's greatness when I was 6 the way that I do now. I wasn't like, hey, man, his basketball IQ was off the charts. I was promised I was not having that conversation at 6, when they beat the Rockets or when they beat the Lakers in the NBA Finals. But I remember it. You know why? Because I remember watching it with my dad. So there's always some of that. But let's be honest about something else. This is why Notre Dame went from like, because to me, that's why people hate Notre Dame. That's not why they're number one, right? There's a difference. We understand why people hate Notre Dame. Why are they number one? And let's be real about the real reason Notre Dame is number one. Jealousy. It's jealousy. Because Notre Dame is doing everything that they were convinced they could never do again. There's a reason that a lot of people kept saying Notre Dame was irrelevant, because they were genuinely convinced, partially because of the actions and words of former Notre Dame coaches, not just one, several. Well, Notre Dame can't be that team again. They felt that Notre Dame is a team that says, hey, listen, you guys were good once. You're not good anymore. You think you can do this, but you actually can't. And now you're doing it. And it's like, wow. The last 3 years, as Notre Dame is really good, is the loudest I've ever heard the chorus for, you got to join a conference. Why was nobody begging Notre Dame to join a conference 10 years ago? Why was nobody begging Notre Dame to join a conference 15 years ago? Well, because Notre Dame was not a team that people viewed as an elite program. So there was no fear of Notre Dame. They weren't stealing 5-star recruits from other players, from other teams with any kind of regularity. And then they'd get, beating these bigs. I think a lot of this comes down to, I've always hated Notre Dame, but now I hate them more because they're really good and they're not supposed to be really good. And all the things that are about them that I hate just really climb to their independence, and they're Catholic and they're this and they're that and they're not supposed to be this. I think that's a lot of it, of why they're number one. Again, that's not maybe why I get why a Michigan fan hates Notre Dame. But why do you hate Notre Dame more than Ohio State now? That's it right there.
Yeah, 100%. It's because they're good. Nobody hated Notre Dame because they were 4-8. They did that for themselves. Nobody hated Notre Dame more in 2016 than other Notre Dame fans. Because how do you go 4-8 at a place like Notre Dame? They got that, that was organically from the fan base. So the rest of the media, other fan bases didn't have to pile on top of it. It's you don't really kick a dog when it's down in sports. You know what I'm saying? It's it's kind of the same thing with Colorado. I'm a big, I didn't think Deion was going to work out at Colorado. And I still don't think that he will. I love Deion Sanders. It doesn't impede my view of him as a person. The second he accepted the job, I was like, this isn't going to work out. At his peak, they'll be a bowl eligible team when Shador's in his, whatever year of college football. And then when he leaves, they're going to be worse. And so then what happened? They were a bowl eligible team in Shador's final year, and then they left, and then they got worse than what they were in his first year. But if Colorado all of a sudden became a playoff team, I personally would be like, I don't think they should be in the playoffs because this, and this. Once they start playing superior competition, it's not going to be the Big 12. Does any of that sound familiar? Yeah. And this offseason, it's extremely loud because they're favorites to win the national championship on FanDuel. Same thing with CJ Carr winning the Heisman. CBS Sports has them the number 2 team in the playoffs. They're getting talked about a lot. And that's what people don't like.
Yep.
It's just because they're good.
And the uniqueness of their good, and people were convinced that they couldn't be good again because of those reasons. That's what it comes down to. Wait, you're not supposed to be a team that can go to the playoffs. Oh, fine. You're in the playoffs, but you're going to get smoked. Okay, you beat Indiana, whatever. Indiana sucks. But Georgia's about to put in that work on you. Oh, okay. Yeah, you beat Georgia by 13, but they didn't have their starting quarterback, so that doesn't count either. Penn State is about to roll y'all. Well, but okay, I know you beat them, but you know what I mean? It was there was this expectation that, yeah, you may get there, but the same thing's going to happen to you that happened last time. And so I think a lot of it is they've been told all these things about Notre Dame, much of which are not true. Trev, let's be real. There's a lot of young Notre Dame fans that don't understand why Notre Dame is independent. That's why whenever you hear people say, I think it's time to join a conference, 8 out of 10 of those people are younger than 30. That has been that's not a fact. That is a anecdotal sentiment. I don't know a lot of people over 30 that are banging on the table for Notre Dame. It's time for Notre Dame to join a conference. It's mostly younger people. I think a lot of that's because they don't understand why Notre Dame is an independent. And because they're hearing the same things that you've been hearing your whole life of, well, it's unfair that Notre Dame is independent, which is hilarious because it's, hold on a second. If being in a conference is so great and it makes it easier to win, which is your argument for why Notre Dame should join, then why should okay, then I don't understand. Shouldn't you want Notre Dame to remain independent? But if being independent gives you an unfair advantage, shouldn't you then try to be independent? Shouldn't Miami and Penn State go back to being independent if being independent gives you an unfair advantage? The arguments are kind of, it's you guys got to pick a lane and stay in it, because you're confusing with these back and forths. So I think that when I was having the debate I had the other day, I started talking about the TV rights. How many people do you think actually know that's why TV deals are the way they are? That's why teams just from 1991 to 1996 just abandoned being an independent. Why do you think that is? Nobody has any idea why. I don't know why Louisville went from being independent to joining Conference USA. They can't explain it. And I think that's part of it too. And they're being talked to by people who also don't explain it and don't know it. And so they fall into the just join a conference just cuz arguments. And I think that what I found is there's a lot of irrational dislike of Notre Dame. And whenever you push back on it, it makes people super mad. Like super mad. So I think a lot of it's jealousy, a lot of it's ignorance. But I think the fact that Notre Dame, if Notre Dame was 8-4 last year and turned down the Pop-Tarts Bowl, does anybody care? No. Are they the number one most hated team if that's the case? No. No. So I look at it and say, I kind of like, bring it. Because I know where your hatred of Notre Dame is coming from. So bring it. And I kind of like it, Trev. It goes back to what we said before. I hope Notre Dame as a program embraces this. Embrace the hate. They're going to hate you no matter what. Stop trying to be nice to people that are going to hate you no matter what you do. Just lean into it and have some fun. And then just go smoke everybody you play. That's what I'd love to see.
Now it's just a question on if we're going to see it. Because I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest thing is they can lean into it. People are going to hate you or love you no matter what you do. So you might as well just play your own game. You know?
So a couple things from we have a resident Ohio State fan and Archer. Antoine hasn't been here in a while, but he's our Michigan fan. Insured by Big is our LSU fan. Although Insured by Big has been frustrating me lately because he keeps putting words in my mouth, and it's starting to tick me off a little bit. But this is Daily Comments. He's our resident Miami fan, and he had two comments that I like, Trev. One is, so who do all the haters pull for on November 7th? Fascinating dilemma for those guys since Miami was also in the top 10. I thought Miami was too low as well. I think Miami should be higher. I know they're a team that a lot of people hate. But his best comment was this one, Trevor. So he goes, first thing I do in NCAA game is put Notre Dame in the ACC so my conference prestige rating is higher for recruiting. Only time I care about Notre Dame being independent. That's very fair. Very well done, dude. Very well done. So, yeah, that's Notre Dame's the number one most hated team. Good. Because if you think you hate Notre Dame now, the next 10 months are going to suck for you. Like really, really, really bad. Really bad. And that's my 2 cents on that, Trev.
It's going to be great. Hopefully they just live up to what we hope that this team is going to do and how they're going to respond this season. I'm looking forward to seeing it. But, folks, that's going to do it for part one of today's show. Don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to talk stars on offense, or who we believe is going to be the stars on offense. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, folks, the best way to support what we do here and the best way to stay in tune is be a premium message board subscriber at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part two of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown podcast brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're talking about the Notre Dame offense. And like we talk about it every season, and really just any championship team, remove Notre Dame away from that conversation. Every team that has won the national championship has some aspect of star power. Indiana won the national championship this past season with the Heisman Trophy winner. Last season, Ohio State had Caleb Downs, Jeremiah Smith, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. The year before that, Michigan wins it with Blake Corum and a host of talented defensive players
J.J.
that are all playing at the next level.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Roman Wilson, Colston Loveland. Yep.
Right. And so every team needs an aspect of star power. Well, for Notre Dame offensively, their bona fide stars are gone. Jeremiah Love's off to the NFL draft. He's going to be a bona fide first-round pick. Jadarian Price is getting first-round buzz. Malachi Fields is getting first-round buzz. So there's a lot of different – two of your offensive captains are off to the NFL as well. So Notre Dame is in a spot where we believe that there's going to be stars on offense. Now it's just a question of who rises to the occasion because they're going to need it this year. Do I think they're going to need it? Do you think they're going to need it to beat Rice or Purdue or Syracuse? No. But you're going to need it on November 7th. You're going to need it when you travel out to Provo, and then you're definitely going to need it in the postseason. So that's why we're talking about this today, folks. Oh, yeah.
I mean, star power matters, Trev, and star power doesn't have to mean with the context of what we're referring to. It's not you're going to be a top 10 NFL draft pick, although it helps. I mean, because if you're a top 10 draft pick, obviously you're going to be great. And I think you could even look at the teams that have been runners up. They've had that star power to get there. You look at last year in Miami. I think they had star power up front in the trenches. Francis Maunoa. I think they had a star wide receiver in Malachi Toney. I think Indiana had a little bit more, which is why in a battle of two really good defenses, Indiana's guys made a few more plays than Miami's guys. I think Indiana had a star power quarterback. Miami didn't. So who stepped up in the fourth quarter and made those big plays? It was the Indiana quarterback, 2024. Notre Dame had star power. That's what helped them get there. Jeremiah Love, Riley Leonard, Jadarian Price, and so you saw that in 2024. 2023, Michael Penix, Rome Odunze were those type of players. And so when you go back over the years, Trev, it's like to make that kind of run, especially now in a 12-team playoff, you need that. Who is that star for Georgia that was going to step up and make the play on offense the way that Riley Leonard and Jordan Faison did for Notre Dame on offense or even on defense? They didn't have it on offense. And that's why Notre Dame was able to make those plays. They didn't have a Riley Leonard that could make some of the plays that Riley Leonard made in that game. So you need that star power. And so it's more about what you do in college. It doesn't have to be, okay, yeah, you went on to be drafted in next round. We've seen a lot of players that were stars in college that weren't stars in the NFL or weren't drafted super high. We've seen some stars in college get drafted too low and then go star in the NFL, Xavier Watts. But it's more about being dominant at football in college and being dominant, especially in the bigger moments. Guys that in those big games have the ability to put a team on their shoulders and say, I got you. And that's what we're talking about, Trev. And when you talk about the Notre Dame offense, it begins with the quarterback and CJ Carr. He's the only arguable star coming back, and I do think it's arguable. I think CJ Carr, no doubt, returns to college football with star power from a recognition standpoint because he's CJ Carr. He's a redshirt freshman. He's a quarterback at Notre Dame. That comes with a set of, okay, you were pretty good, and he had a great redshirt freshman year. I think CJ was great for a redshirt freshman last year. There's another level he has to get to in some things he has to prove to be a star in the way that we're referring to here. I thought CJ did a great job last year of, dude, you are part of the ride, and there's going to be times that there's times we're going to have to let you take a turn driving the bus. Like they're all focused on Jeremiah. NC State was obviously focused on stopping Jeremiah Love. And so, CJ, we need you to drive the bus for this game. And what did he do, Trev? He drove the bus. But now you enter a situation where you don't have Jeremiah Love. You don't have Jadarian Price. You are now permanent seatbelt on. You are in the driver's seat. Everybody else, you know what I mean, come along for the ride. Can he be that? That's the question about CJ. But there's just a level for me, Trev, a level of confidence that, yes, he has to prove it, but there's just maybe I'm incorrect here. Maybe I'm putting too much on his shoulders. Maybe I'm a lot of things, but I don't really have a lot of concern about. I can admit what he needs to do, but I have no doubt that he's going to do it.
I think that's a really good way to put it. I'm with you. I think out of everybody on offense, there might be a couple others you could argue, but I think CJ has kind of that stake to claim that he is the returning star on this team. And to your point, they're going to need him to be because of the absence of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price and Malachi Fields. You have a young, talented receiving core, but who's going to be the point guard? Who's distributing the ball to these young and talented guys? It's going to be number 13. I'm with you. I think he's a star. And it's not just because his last name is Carr. Like, I've also seen that before, too. It's like, the lineage dating back to Michigan football. I don't buy into that because his last name isn't Manning. Now, Arch, I also think, is going to have a great year this year. I think there's a reason why they're 1-2 on FanDuel for the number one odds to win the Heisman Trophy. But with that being said, I do think CJ's kind of already reached that level of stardom, and I'm interested to see what he does this year. So I'm with you. I think he does it, and I think they're going to need him to be if they wish to reach the level that they want to reach, which is a national championship. I think that's a good point. Oh, go ahead.
No, I'm good.
Oh, apologies.
I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm ready to go.
Yeah, my bad read on my side. Hopefully, we don't see a lot of those from CJ this season either.
Sorry, I just took it. I inhaled at the wrong time. It looked like I had something. I always have something to say, Trev.
That's what I need, man. In
the next one.
In transition, that's just take it away, Trev. That's what I need, just every time. No, so my next, my
the
first
floor
actually.
Is yours.
Thank you,
the floor
thank
is
you, sir.
yours.
Thank you, sir. My first player for star power, I'm going with Aeneas Williams, the guy stepping into the number one running back role. And I'm choosing this for a couple of reasons. One, we've seen him perform on a bigger stage than what CJ Carr's performed on. Now, this isn't a conversation of who is going to be the bigger star. I'm saying relative to the offensive skill positions, it's like him and Jaden Greathouse I've seen in the postseason ball out to varying degrees.
I'd say Jordan Faison too. He was really good against Indiana and Georgia. Yeah.
In the college football playoff semifinals. Now, I'm not pushing all of my chips on the table because of a wheel route and a 20-yard run that got them into the red zone. But as a true freshman, he was ready for those moments. I'm very eager to see what he does when he steps into that number one role. Another thing that feeds into this for me as well is also the fact that the track record at Notre Dame, whoever steps into that number one running back role, I mean, honestly, since Freeman took over, we can have a debate about 2022, but RB1 at Notre Dame kind of becomes a star. Audric was rotational in 2022. When he took over in 2023, he became the star of that offense. He was the guy in the green basketball jersey on College game day that when interviewed when Ohio State was in town, he had 18 rushing touchdowns. He leaves. What happens? You insert Jeremiah Love as the number one running back. Doesn't wait very long to burst onto the scene. He becomes one of the stars on offense as well. Then obviously we know what happened with Jeremiah Love this year. I don't see, combine that with what I believe the offensive line is going to be this year, I don't think there's any reason why Aeneas Williams can't be the next star running back at Notre Dame. Now, I will say it's not as clear-cut as it was with Audric and with Jeremiah, but I'm going with him to be the guy as of right now on March 4th.
Yeah, look, I think Aeneas is going to have a very good season. I have no doubt he's going to have a good season. Part of the reason that I didn't view him as a guy that's on my breakout star thing is because of exactly what you said. I think there's going to be a level of production from the running back room that's going to, in my opinion, going to look a little bit like 2017. Sure. There's a difference between Josh Adams and Jeremiah Love, even though Josh Adams was every bit as productive as Jeremiah Love in a lot of different ways. And part of that is why I don't think he's going to be a star. I think, number one, there's going to be a little bit more of a rotation at running back this year. I think CJ's performance is going to take a little bit of that shine. The other part of it is because I think a lot of it's going to come down to the offensive linemen. And that's where a lot of star power is going to be. I haven't been this confident about the offensive line since Harry Hiestand was the coach. I'm being dead serious because what I've been begging for 2 years, I think is finally going to happen.
Yeah.
And we have evidence that it's going to happen. And that is that, a lot of these young studs that Notre Dame recruited are now going to get their chance to shine. And so you're going to see Gerby Lambert, the Anthony Knapps, the Will Blacks more so dominating this offensive line. And that's where my next star comes from. And that is, I think Gerby Lambert becomes a star offensive lineman this year, both reputation-wise and also performance-wise. And this conversation is meant more to focus on the performance as opposed to the recognition. If Aeneas has 1,000-yard season in the regular season, but nobody gives him any respect because it doesn't look as sexy as what Jeremiah Love did, he's still star power because of how he's performing in the game, especially if he has like a big game against Miami or has a big game against BYU. I look at guys like Gerby Lambert as first and foremost, and I'm like, this guy is going to be a star. He was pretty good last year. And Trev, as I'm putting these run game videos together, and I know you guys watch through some of that. You watch Gerby in the first few games, and then you watch Gerby like mid-October into November. You're like, dude, he just got better and better and better and better. And even with a lot of technical deficiencies is a bad word for that. Lack of maturity with his technical game, which you expect of a redshirt freshman. Anthony Knapp had those issues in his first year as a starter as well. Still did last year, number 2. And so, I look at it and say, this is a situation where he is going to step in and be an absolutely dominant player. I think he's even more comfortable at tackle. He is both nationally and then when you type in the film, gonna be a star. Absolutely correct in saying it, not correct, but absolutely gonna step up and just be that monster and be a driver of the offensive line. But I know we're not stopping with him.
No, my next guy is also on the offensive line, and I'm going with Anthony Knapp. To Brian's point, I think we're finally going to get the offensive line lineup that we've desired to see really the last 2 seasons, give or take. More so Anthony Knapp being an inside interior offensive lineman where I think he can absolutely thrive. What you now, I guess you could say, lack with a lot of the veteran presences on the interior of Notre Dame's offensive line having departed the last 2 years. Rocco Spindler, Pat Coogan, now Billy Schrouth. Ashton Craig is working his way back from injury. Kirby Lambert's getting kicked to the outside. We haven't seen Charles Jagus on much of a capacity yet. I think Anthony Knapp could be that presence on the interior where it's, hey, we talk a lot about Notre Dame's short yardage on this show and how that has to improve. That's almost top of the list. Short yardage and red zone short yardage is where this team has to get better. This offense has to get better. I think the opportunity in front of Anthony Knapp is to say, hey, they're in the huddle. Do you remember in the Here Comes the Irish documentary? It was against Boise State. Malachi Fields was like, hey, just throw a fade. Don't overthink it. Just throw me the football.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yes. I think you could see that from 54 in the huddle this year, but it's don't overthink it. Run behind me.
Yes. Yes.
Don't overthink it. Inside zone, put in our biggest running back and just get behind me and we hit pay dirt. Yep. I really do think that season is the potential for Knapp because he is in a position now that suits him a lot more. He doesn't have to play in space. The technical issues, they still need worked on, but I think some of them will shore up themselves because he is now in a position he's more naturally apt to play.
And he's older. He's played a bunch. He's seen it all now. You're good. I don't care how well Joe Alt had a lot more technical issues as a freshman than he did as a sophomore, and a lot more technical issues as a sophomore than he did as a junior. And he had a, Chiefs Ring of Fame left tackle dad, you know what I mean, who taught him how to play the game. So absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah, and it's that duo, Trev. And if Charles Jagasaw was healthy, we'd be talking about him. Will Black has a chance to be that guy. Ashton Craig has a chance to be that guy. That's what has me so excited about the offensive line. It's just at the point now where if Joe Rudolph doesn't change at all as a coach, this line's going to be way better just because it's so much more talented and you have guys in the right spots. And that's what has me very fired up. And when Notre Dame's offensive line is dominant, that helps make your team a whole lot better and also brings about national recognition. So I think with Lambert and Knapp, we're not just talking about, at least I'm not, and I don't believe you are either, Trev. Star power number one for what we're discussing is what does the film look like? What is your impact on the field? But then the other part of it, with that comes national recognition. And I think you're going to see that from Anthony and Gerby this season as well.
Absolutely.
You know who I'm excited to see come back and have some star power, Trev? Jaden Greathouse. Now, what I don't know about Jaden Greathouse is going to be, will he have star power from the standpoint of he's going to go out there and catch 70 balls for 1,000 yards? I don't think so. I think they're going to spread the ball around a lot more this year. But what I am saying is I think he's going to be that guy that in the big games this year is that dude that they turn to in the big moments. That's where I see Jaden Greathouse being a star again. And we've seen him do that. We've seen him step up in those moments and not just in 2024, in very limited opportunities last year when they threw him the ball. I mean, think about that last drive against Miami. Who was Notre Dame trying to dial a play up to on the play where CJ got sacked? They were trying to go to Jaden Greathouse, and he got open. It's just the left tackle and the right tackle got destroyed, and CJ had no chance to get the ball off. When they needed a big play on offense against A&M, who'd they go to? Love, Malachi, Jaden Greathouse. You remember that slot fade he caught for a big play in that game when they were really trying to get things going. I think I don't know what his production is going to look like start to finish, but I think we're going to look back and say, however much production he had, he was clutch, he was money, and he did it in all stages, which we've already seen him do. That's why Jaden Greathouse is next on my list.
I think that's a good pick. I want to be there, man. I really do. And I do think that this could be a year for him where he breaks out. I'm just looking for, here's all I'll say. I'm looking forward to the day where we can talk about Jaden Greathouse and it's not in separate portions. It's not, do you remember this one play in this game this year and that one game, that 1 year, or that one drive, that 1 year, that one game? It's, yeah, he just ate people alive in 2026, period, end of sentence. The story ends there. And I'm with you. I do think that that opportunity is on the table for him this year. But another player that I think that could not necessarily challenge him for that star power, but I think could be right up there with him is Jordan Faison. He's the most productive receiver that Notre Dame has coming back to the roster this year. And he broke out last year simply because he was healthy. It wasn't, he didn't do anything new. He was just available more. Similar to Jaden Greathouse, he didn't do anything against, Miami or NC State or Texas A&M that we hadn't seen him do before on arguably bigger stages. We saw him do that against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. We saw him do that against Indiana at home in the first round of the college football playoffs. We just got to see it for an entire season because he was healthy. He was utilized a little bit more. One could argue slightly overutilized, but I think this is a really big year for Jordan Faison. He elected to go and not play lacrosse, a sport that he's very passionate about, to focus on football. A lot of people draw alliteration to that and think that it's just strictly for the next level. I think it's for this upcoming season. I think Jordan Faison's going to do some stuff this year, man.
Here's my question on Jordan Faison. Number one, how do they use him? Like, I want to see them do more things with him to try to get him the ball in space. That's my big thing. I don't think they did enough of that this last year. That's not Jordan Faison's fault. He can't call the plays. You know what I mean? It's like, it's, I do think there needs to be some more of that. And I think we'll see some of that this year. Number two, I need to see Jordan do it more in the big moments. Now, he played well against Indiana and Georgia. I want to see him take it to another level in some of those big moments in the regular season. And that's also true of Jaden Greathouse. That's kind of true of both of those guys to some degree. But Faison's is less about Faison and more about how are they going to use him. Like that's kind of my thing. I don't know that Jordan Faison had a whole lot of chances to go make a bunch of plays against Miami or even Texas A&M for that matter. So that's going to be part of it for me. There's some other guys, Trev, that I think have a chance to be there too. Obviously, the Ohio State wide receivers, Miles Porter, goodness gracious, Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter, I think both have a chance to be that. If Charles Jagasaw has a chance to, if he's healthy, he's another guy that has a chance. And I know there's a tight end, Trev, that you really thought long and hard about, adding to this star power list as well. And I'm with you.
Yeah, I was really close to having James Flanagan in one of the players that I predicted to become a star this year. I think the tight end room is the most wide open position room on the team because there's so many factors going into, we just don't know what we're going to see from this unit, which is weird to say when we're talking about Notre Dame, a program that is just used to producing high-level tight ends. But even over the last couple seasons, put production aside, we knew going into 2024, Mitch Evans was going to be the guy. We knew in 2023, Mitch Evans was going to be the guy, barring a big breakout or a healthy offseason from Eli Raridan. In 25, we knew, barring an injury, Eli Raridan was going to be the guy. This year, you could slate in Cooper Flanagan because he's the returner. Haven't seen him in football pads since the Indiana home game in 2024. Actually, that's a lie. I think he went through warmups in one of the home games this past year, but he never played. He just wasn't deemed good to go, but he went through the calisthenic stretches and things like that. Ty Washington, we saw what he was in this offense last year. Does he take on a bigger role? I'm not sure. Academically, Jack Larson is now a junior. Is this the year that he takes on? Or is it the true freshman in James Flanagan that came on last year as a blocker and was destroying people at the end of the year? I'm extremely high on the freshman coming in, but not enough willing to say like Ian Premer is going to go from not being an early enrollee to a star on Notre Dame's offense. Is he capable of it? Sure. But I think James Flanagan could be tight end one by the end of the season and be one of the players that we're sitting here talking about in December of like, hey, this kid's got to have a big playoffs. He's a mismatch. He's a this. He has to have an impact in both phases of the offense. So I was very close to adding James Flanagan. It's just a pretty big jump for him going from sometimes tight end to rotational blocker to a star on offense. That's ultimately what held it out for me.
It's tempting.
Yeah.
It's very tempting. I'm with you. It was very tempting for me to think about Ashton Craig because I think he could have a big year. It was very tempting for me to throw Quincy Porter or Mylan Graham into the conversation. I'm with you on that. But the guys that aren't on there either have health questions, Charles Jagusah, Ashton Craig, or you've got the talent, but bro, where you are now to where you need to be a star is a long way to go. And I can't put you in there just yet.
Right.
But I think what excites me about this team, Trev, and I didn't even mention guys who were, who have even further to go. I mean, it would not shock me if like the light went on for Cam Williams this offseason and he became a star. It wouldn't shock me if Kedron Young had that kind of jump. It wouldn't shock me if Nolan James Jr. becomes the number one running back coming out of it. And it has nothing to do with Aeneas Williams not being good or not being as good as I think. It just, when you have that kind of talent, those players, you have more of that. And and we didn't mention Will Black because it's unfair for me to ask a kid to go from being a redshirt freshman who barely played or a true freshman who barely played to a redshirt freshman star. But we've seen it. Quentin Nelson did that in 2015. And so those are the things, Trev, that it's like there's a lot more candidates than just the guys we talked about. I think the 6 we talked about are the guys that have the most potential combined with the proven aspects of it in the experience. But what excites me is the fact that there are so many young guys who don't have that proven ability. You don't need all of them to step up, but if just a few of them do, this team is going to be ridiculous.
Absolutely. And some of it with the 6 guys that we talked about, man, it's just also opportunity. Again, we go back to just the current state of Notre Dame's roster and how loaded it is with talent. Aeneas Williams most likely will be RB1. Now, I'm sure Kedron Young and Nolan James will have something to say about that, the 2 incoming freshmen. I don't really know if Blake Hebert or Noah Grubbs are going to have anything to say about CJ Carr becoming a star this year in Notre Dame's offense. Gerby Lambert's probably going to be the starting right tackle. Ideally, Anthony Knapp is the starting left guard. So some of it on top of that, what we've talked about is the opportunity that they have. With the receivers, it's a little bit more of a question because I could see it being any one of them realistically. I just think the 2 most veteran guys in the room in Greathouse and Faison, 2 of the guys that we talked about, have the most opportunity to do that. But it wouldn't shock me if it was Mylan Graham or Quincy Porter or Elijah Burris or Cam Williams.
Yeah.
None of those would surprise me.
Get you so fired up because there's so much talent and you don't need all of them to be good. You just need like a couple, to really step up and be that guy. There's 7 or 8 guys that I could point to say, I could see that guy jumping out and being a star player this year. At receiver, you really only need one of them to be that guy. The rest can be good complementary players if just one of them steps up to be that. But there's a chance that multiple of those guys do that. Same thing with the offensive line. If everybody's just good and Gerby Lambert's elite, that's a really good offensive line. But if Gerby's elite and Knapp's elite and everybody else is good, that makes you even better. And you keep going down that path, and that's what gets me fired up for what this team can be this season. When you talk about like the star power of this offense, there's just a lot of that. I'll ask you this before we move on to part 3 of today's show, Trev. What player besides CJ Carr, if I said, okay, Trev, you can only pick one guy, not named CJ Carr, that you're most confident is going to become a star player based on how he performs on Saturday? How he performs, not a byproduct of other things, but just when you watch his film, you're like, that guy is a dude. That guy's an absolute stud. What's the one guy outside of CJ that you're most confident in?
Gosh, if I only had to pick one, because honestly, right now, I'm tied between 2 guys, and they're both on the offensive line. if I'm being honest with you. Gosh, if I have to pick one, I would probably say Gerby because of his overall upside and what he brings to the table. But I'm telling you, it's like 1A and 1AA between him and Anthony Knapp for me.
Yeah.
I think Gerby's, now that he's back in his most comfortable position, and it's not like he looked crazy uncomfortable at guard. I think,
good.
Yeah, man. I mean,
I still think he had the best. He had the best pass set from a left tackle all season last year.
100%.
He played one snap at left tackle.
Yes. It's if I was forced to pick one, I would go Gerby by like that much of a margin because I really do think moving Anthony Knapp to the interior, he is going to put people on notice, man. I've not been a guy that will run cover for Anthony Knapp, but with that being said, I don't think he's been abysmal. He's not been bad. He's not what some people have made him out to be. Getting him on the interior where he's more comfortable, people are going to be like, oh, okay, what we saw from Billy Schrouth against USC, we might just see that for 12 games in 2026. I really believe that.
That's kind of the two for me. Greathouse is in that conversation well, but I just still don't know how they view Greathouse. Like, do they view him the way that I do? Go ahead. You're going to say something there?
Well, I was going to say it's kind of like what you brought out with Faison. It's like we believe that he can be a star, but some of it's out of his control. I feel that way about Greathouse to a degree. I have no doubt that his physical capabilities make him a star. We've seen it.
Yep.
But
one game's he just got hot. Back-to-back games, that's like, okay. Yeah. So, Trev, mine was Lambert as well. And really what it comes down to, it's just he just has things that Anthony Knapp and really nobody else in the offensive line has. He's 6'7", he'll be 330 plus. There's just things that God gave him that he didn't give everybody else. You know what I mean? Except for Charles Jagasaw and Will Black eventually. I mean, I think we'll be having this conversation about Will Black a year from now.
Absolutely.
That's why I went with Gerby over Anthony, but I'm with you on the challenge of the two of those two players. But I think thing that kind of fires me up is I look at the chat and I'm saying Jordan Faison, Aeneas Williams. So sign, cosine, tangent says Jordan Faison. Black Irish says Aeneas Williams. Irish for Life 99 says Ian Premer. Andrew Gilmore said Aeneas Williams. And then he said later Mylan Graham. Like, we're seeing a lot of different names. And I think that speaks to what we're talking about here, which is it's not, well, yeah, of course it's going to be that guy because there's a big drop-off between him and everybody else. So you see that, and I think that's what gets me kind of fired up. That's what gets me, because it's not just that guy and then everybody else. It's that guy, that guy, that guy, but then also maybe that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy, that guy. And that's what gets me jazzed, Trev.
Yeah,
truly
man.
Jazzed for this offense in 2025-6.
Yeah.
I didn't take it that way.
Jazz hands, baby.
No, I ain't saying I ain't go all there. I'm just saying I'm pretty jazzed up, man. Pretty fired up about this offense because there's just so much depth of talent on this football team.
Absolutely. You guys know what I'm going to say. It's that margin for error. The days of you need X receiver here, or receiver A or receiver B to pan out, or this is going to be an interesting year. The days of that are gone. And the fact that we can sit here and have a conversation like that is really special. So folks, that's going to do it for part 2 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast. Don't go anywhere. We are getting ready to talk about Notre Dame's 2027 defensive line recruiting, the names to know. But before we get there, hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to stay in tune and the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, in part 3 of today's show here on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're going to be talking about the 2027 recruiting class. And this is something that we've kind of been doing here, really the last couple of weeks. And we've been talking about names to know. Another reason to be subscribed to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. Brian's been putting out lists, and they've been extremely helpful for me. I know they've been extremely helpful for people in the chat and other message board members of just recruiting names to know in the 2027 recruiting class. Today, we're going to be talking about the defensive line and the names to know. We're separating them into two. We're talking about defensive ends and then also the interior of the defensive line. But Brian, to get this conversation started, we kind of have to give a preview of like the state of the state and what some of the needs are for the defensive end recruiting. Let's start there.
Well, I don't know where Notre Dame is right now with their thoughts on what their needs are from a number standpoint. I've heard 2, I've heard 3. Basically depends on who you talk to. I'm very curious to see once the new staff is in place and has evaluated the team, they've gone through spring, if the number desires change. I personally believe they need to go 3 at defensive end in this class. You got 2 studs last year. Your best defensive end in 2024, or no, the 2025 class is probably going to move inside to D tackle. And you look at the 23 class, obviously that class is or the 24 class, Bryce Young is going into his junior year. When the 27 class arrives, he'll be a senior, and then of course the 23 class is going to be 5th year seniors are gone when this class arrives. I mean, so I think you need 3. I think there's some depth issues on the defensive end position moving forward. Fine with where it is this year, but moving forward. And remember, Logan Thomas did not redshirt his first 2 years, so he's a true junior. So unless he redshirts this year, when this class shows up, he's a senior who have 1 year of eligibility left. So I think they need 3 numbers-wise. But I also think beyond that, they need at least 1, if not 2, impact talents. The third guy can be a Gordy Solstead, a Joe Reef type of guy that is a little bit of a lower floor but a higher ceiling. You take a chance on a Joe Reef because maybe he doesn't fill out how you like and maybe he doesn't do this. But, man, if it clicks, he could be a really good football player for you. Feel the same way with Gordy Solstead. Can't have 3 of those guys in this class. You need at least 1 guy that you're like, hey, this guy is got a pretty high floor. You need at least 1 guy that's got an elite ceiling. And then the other guy could be a boomer bust kind of guy. And I hate the word boomer bust, but you all understand the expression. And that's why I point to like a Joe Reef. I point to a Gordy Solstead at D tackle. I point to some of those type of players because some of those guys have boomed. I mean, going back over the years, that's exactly what Adetokunbo Ogundeji was. He was exactly the kind of player I'm talking. Yeah, you got your Khalid Kareem, you got your Julian Akwara. You take a shot on an Adetokunbo Ogundeji player. Super raw, 215 pounds, was committed to Western Michigan. There were 3 Power 4 teams that got on him. Oregon, Notre Dame, and Pitt. Pitt's D-line coach at the time was obviously Charlie Partridge. I believe it was Charlie Partridge. He had just gotten on. But when I look at it, Trev, that's kind of where I'm at. I kind of see it as like, give me 3, and that's kind of, give me some of that. That's the talent breakdown that I at least need to see 1 of those type of players. 1 high floor, 1 high ceiling. If you do that, then the third can be a boomer bust guy. If you get 3 studs, then you get 3 studs. That's phenomenal. But it doesn't have to be 3 Rodney Dunhams or Ebenezer Utades. You need to give me at least 1 or 2 of those in this class because this is a position that they have not shown that they can stack classes back to back to back. They haven't. They've had some good years. They've had some great years. And then they've had some years. In some years they've done well, but then a player shows up and he adds 50 pounds of good weight just because his body, just like Christopher Burgess not sticking at defensive end. I don't know what Notre Dame could have done about that. Like if you see Christopher Burgess, he's at 300 pounds and it's like, yep, that's natural. He's just a massive young man, and that's where his game kind of grew to. I don't fault him for that. But the rest of the class, there were some, because you didn't have another higher floor guy in that class. So that's what I want to see from this group, Trev. And the good news is the board is impressive. It's a talented board, but needs-wise, I do want to see 3 in this class.
That makes sense. Get 2 solidified guys and then take a flyer on somebody. I get that completely. Kick the tires on a kid that has high upside, tremendous upside, and might be able to contribute during his redshirt sophomore, redshirt junior season. I get that completely. Let's talk about some of those names then, Brian, and some names to know for the 2027 defensive end class, and people names that people should be on alert for Notre Dame's recruiting.
So a defensive end, Trev, obviously, and we'll do defensive tackle here in a second. But there's several names to know. First one that I think fans need to get a little bit acclimated with is a young man from Pennsylvania named Abraham Cisse. Very talented football player, 6'5", 225. We're going to watch his film here in a little bit. Incredibly gifted young man. Has had a bit of an interesting sort of recruitment. Notre Dame was on him early, but it wasn't like they were on him. They were on his list, but he just kind of had some other schools that he liked more that maybe liked him a lot more. Notre Dame started to get on him more at the end of Al Washington's tenure, and they've really kind of jumped big in on him since Charlie Partridge took over, and he shot way up the list. So I think that's a player that people need to keep an eye on as far as like that. He's got that elite talent. He's got that elite frame. He's got all the traits that you want. He's being recruited by all the right schools, all that kind of stuff. So that's obviously a very big one. There's another big-time player to know, and we've also seen Abraham Cisse's recruiting ranking has kind of shot up quite a bit recently as well. He's now a top 40 player by 247 and Rivals. So he's not just some project. When I first watched him, he wasn't ranked as high. He's really skyrocketed as people started to get into the film. There's another big-time young man. This is someone who everybody does know, and that is Zyron Forstall, who is from IMG Academy. I believe he's originally from Louisiana. He's a big-time football player. Very odd ranking. He's ranked as a top 15 player by 247 and ESPN, but On3 has him outside the top 100. I'm not quite sure why. Don't really care. But what I know is he's a big-time talent. They're not in as good of a place with him compared to some other schools, or even as compared there with Abraham Cisse, who I do believe Notre Dame is in the best spot for. With Zyron, I think they're more part of a group of top schools: LSU, Miami, Texas A&M. I think there's one other school. I think he's got like a 5 or 6 that he really likes. Those are his like 4 of the top schools. So they're in a battle with him, but they're in the game. They're in it with him. Now it's about get him back on campus, get him up here in the spring, then get him back on campus in the fall. Like that's going to be the key with Zyron Forstall. He's a name that you definitely want to know. There's another, we're going to watch his film a little bit. And the other guy's film we're going to watch, and I'll mention a few more names, and we'll get to the rest of the film later. But another guy that they recently offered, and they offered him during the most recent like January visits, is a young man named Mekhi Brown, who is a stud. Again, another highly ranked player. Not sure why it took so long to get in on him. 6'6", 235. When Trev and I are watching film, Trev's first response is, that dude is long. He absolutely is. Very talented player. Again, early in the process right now with him. I think Notre Dame's in the game. He's going to visit this spring. I'm looking right now. I believe, Trev, that he is someone that I think, let me just pull it up here, I believe has a visit scheduled already to Notre Dame. Yes, he'll be here for the Blue Gold game. So he already has a visit set up to Notre Dame. So he'll be here for the Blue Gold game. That's got to go well. If that goes well, I absolutely see him getting back on campus for an official visit. Some other names to know. KJ Green, talented defensive end from Georgia. Notre Dame is trying hard to get in with him. They were starting to kind of get more involved when Washington left. I think that has once again put them behind, but he's a guy that they like and they're going to keep trying on. There's another talented young player that Notre Dame is looking at from Maryland, a kid named Ryan Jackson, 6'3", 230, real twitchy edge player. Trev and I were watching this film a little bit early. He's another one they're trying to get on campus. Aiden O'Neal is a really talented big kid from Bergen Catholic, 6'5", 250. Notre Dame sees him as an edge. They don't see him as a guy that they're going to put a bunch of weight on and move the D tackle. I asked about that today just to clarify. Like, no, we see him as an edge. Big kid, physical kid, but athletic as well, and a guy that they really like a lot. Again, they got on him late, so he's another one that they've got to get on campus. And the late stuff is, guys, when you have the coaching changes they've had, it's just kind of part of the deal. But they're pushing hard for him now. And then the other young man that they recently offered is Afanyi Emadobi, who's from Fort Wayne, who's starting to kind of blow up a little bit from a recruiting standpoint. I'm not quite sure where he stands with them. I know that they've offered him. I know that they want to get him on campus. I don't know where he is on the board. He's an interesting prospect we'll talk more about down the road, Trev. Their D-line coaches are seeing something with him because he's starting to get more impressive offers. Penn State's about to have him on campus. Notre Dame offered him. I need to see it a little bit more. I see some tools. I'm not completely blown away just yet. But he's the kind of kid, though, if he's your third D end in the class, I'm good. I'm good. But he's got to be your three, at least for what we see right now. So like that's kind of the board. There's a couple other players on the board. Santana Harvey is a young man on the board right now that Notre Dame is still on. They are still recruiting Chris Whitehead. I don't think they have any shot there with him. And he's from Northrop for those people asking. He's from Northrop. So I just think when you look at it, Trev, this is a really good board. It's a pretty deep board. There's a lot of talent on here. It's just going to come down to, can you close on two of these guys you've been on for a while? Between Cisse, Forstall, Mekhi Brown, and KJ Green, Aiden O'Neal, you've got to close on at least one of those guys. If you can get two, that's phenomenal. Then if your number two guy is like a Ryan Jackson, who I like a lot, but he's a little smaller, got to fill out. There's some work needed there. And then, you got Afanyi Emadobi as your number three. That's a pretty good D-line class. That's a pretty good DN class. To have an elite DN class for the second straight year, you need two of Abraham Cisse, Zyron Forstall, Mekhi Brown, KJ Green, and Aiden O'Neal. I think you need two of those guys to have a truly elite class at defensive end for the second straight year. That's my thoughts.
That makes sense. And you guys will see why here in a minute when we pop on the film, because these guys absolutely pop. Throughout the week, Brian and I have been kind of sitting down and doing like our own film studies and stuff like that with some of these players. Man, they're impressive.
Yes.
They are really impressive.
They are. And we're actually going to do that now, Trev. I'm actually ready to look at some of this defensive end film. Do you want to do DN film and then we go through the D tackle board, or do you want to do it? Okay, good. That's kind of what I was thinking. So we'll do that. All right, so let's get this first player we're going to watch is Abraham Cisse. You guys are going to see this. This is exactly what we expect Notre Dame to see. You'll see him on the left of the screen right now. Notre Dame likes defensive ends. They like length, check. They like athleticism, check. They like production, check. And the ceiling is tremendous. Like, he's very raw. You see him a lot in a 4-point stance, but look at that get off right there, Trev. Like, that's the thing that you see. That just super quick off the ball. See how he keeps that bend? Times he'll stand up, but he really does a nice job of keeping that. He doesn't lift straight up all the time. He comes off. He can bend. He's super twitchy. He's got really long arms, and he's surprisingly powerful. Like, surprisingly powerful. But you'll see several clips on his highlights, and then his game film shows us too, where it looks like he's too far away to get his hands on the quarterback or the running back, and the next thing you know, he just kind of gets these go-go gadget arms out, and he just pulls the guy down. He's got to me on film, it looks like he's kind of got like a Boubacar Traore type wingspan. That's what I see. And just the get off though, Trev, is really impressive. This is one he's inside. He does kind of stand up a little bit on this one, embraces contact, but that's because he's inside. He's not coming off the edge. I don't think Notre Dame's going to put him inside a whole bunch in his career, but yeah, he's got great athleticism. And the other thing too is he can bend. Like, he knows how to really get around the edge and get to the quarterback. And that's without really having the kind of advanced technique that you're going to learn once you get to college. There's a lot to like about Abraham Cisse.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he has great change of direction. When he penetrates too deep into the backfield, he's able to plan on his outside foot like you saw in the clip there. Quick change of direction, really good hips to open up, fly to the quarterback, makes a play for the football. Really like this kid. Extremely long. I do like the versatility, too. We've seen him in a 4-point stance, now a 3-point stance. We've seen him in a 2-point stance. I'm more of a consistency guy myself, so I think some of those things will get cleaned up when he gets to South Bend. But, man, this kid is exceptionally twitchy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and this is junior film, right? I mean, this play's funny because, like, this is him making a mistake. Like, this is not a good clip, right? But I love the fact that he doesn't quit. Keeps hustling, comes around, gets his hands on the football, knocks the ball out. Some of that stuff he'll learn. But what you can't teach, Trev, is 6'5", 6'6". What you can't teach is super long arms. What you can't teach is that initial explosiveness. What you can't teach is just the hand power that I believe he has when you watch film. The technique, the pad level, the change of direction technique, the counter move, the spin move, the club move, the swim move, all that stuff. You can teach all that. Look at that catch. You can teach all that stuff. But what you can't teach is that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that you can't teach. And I love guys like that. Love guys like that. And the rawness, like, yeah, he's definitely raw, but that's stuff that with a good offensive line coach can be taught right away. I mean, first spring, you can learn a lot of that stuff. By second year, you're in a great position. So that's a really impressive aspect of it.
He's just so freakishly long, man.
Yeah. Yep.
Goodness
very
gracious.
Talented player. Very talented player. So this is one of the top guys on the board. He's in that group of you have to get one of these guys. He, to me, is a must get. You're in a great position right now. I would argue Notre Dame is his leader. Ohio State was, I think, his early leader. I don't know that they're in it as much with him anymore. No, there's a lot of other schools really coming along hard for Abraham, but this is a kid that Notre Dame has to close on, Trevor. Like, he is priority number one because of A, the elite talent, B, because you're in such a good place. You've got to be able to close on him. And he'll be on campus this spring. You know, he's going to be, I believe he might have 2. He's going to be here for the Blue Gold game, and I'm pretty sure that his official visit has pretty much been decided, although not yet announced. But I'm not 100% sold on that. But this is one of those guys you say, in this class, you've got to get him. Because he's got stuff you just absolutely cannot teach. Absolutely cannot teach. And he's raw, but I don't think he's as raw as what some people think he is. Raw to me, like super raw, is a guy that just started playing football. Jason Onye as a junior was super raw. This is a kid that understands football. He's got a lot of good football instincts. He has to learn how to use his hands better. He has to learn counter moves and things like that. Abraham Cisse knows how to play football. He just has to learn some like he's already got the football 101 down. It's those advanced level things that he's going to have to learn. And once he learns those, he's going to be really good. And I think that stuff can come relatively quickly if he's a kid that can learn. And I don't ever know that, but coaches know that. And I would assume that since they're pressing as hard for him as they are, that they believe he has that kind of ability. Look at him tracking the deep ball. That's really, really nice catch. Really nice catch.
Yeah,
and Trev, I mean, go ahead. Go.
I was about to say, I like the way that you explained raw, because he has a good feel for the game. Like, raw is just, you're just the most athletic person on the field, and your coach tells you before you run out there, hey, go get the football. Like, kind of like you see in like those sports movies sometimes, where it's like, go get the quarterback. But for him, he has a great feel for the game. It's just, to your point, the higher level things of his game have to be developed a little more.
Yep. How to use his hands, counter moves, you know, how to properly take on a pulling guard thing. Like, he knows I got to take this guy on, but, you know, with the proper shoulder, proper aiming point, those things all have to be taught. And those are things that I think we can learn pretty quickly, Trev. So that is Abraham Cisse. The other thing too, Trev, as we kind of start moving on to the next player on our list, and that's going to be Zyron Forstall, who's a little bit of a different player. But I also really want Notre Dame, and I've said this before, I want them to start having more and more success in Pennsylvania. And right now, with James Franklin not being at Penn State, now is the perfect time for Notre Dame to get into Maryland, to get into Pennsylvania, to get back into Jersey, and start cleaning up again in those states. Now that Penn State doesn't have that same star recruiter that they had. And Notre Dame was even able to beat him for some people this past year, which was huge. Going into Maryland and getting Kari Adams, going into Pennsylvania and getting Joey O'Brien was huge. Now you really got to take advantage, because kids like Abraham Cisse have been going to Penn State and becoming first-round draft picks. I mean, they've been pumping out and Notre Dame's been losing a lot of these kids. You know, you think of the kid from Jersey that they lost a few years ago that went on, Jason Owe, that went on to be a first-round pick. Denied Dennis Sutton, Abdul Carter. I mean, who was the kid they had a couple years ago? Chop Robinson. You know, they've been pumping out these kids nonstop year after year after year, and this is the kind of kid that they would go get. And Notre Dame needs to start getting more and more of those guys as well. Next guy we're going to break down, Trev, is Zyron Forstall from IMG Academy. Very different type of player. Not quite as tall. His length is good. I don't know. That's the one question I have about him is I'd be very curious to kind of what his wingspan is. I don't see it being a problem. I just don't think it. I don't know if it's elite. I'd want to see that. But, 6'3", 230, athletic kid, super explosive and twitchy. And as you see here, I mean, they're lining him up off the ball, Trev. You and I are talking before the show. Zyron's the kind of kid that you could have as your defensive end and do so much with him. You can drop him off and reroute a slot as he plays a hook curl. You can go 3-3 stack and move him around and just blitz him from anywhere. Like his unique athletic skills give you some things you can really, really do. Notre Dame likes sub packages. They like guys that can jack of all trades. Well, they've had that at linebacker. He's the kind of kid that could be that at defensive end. His range, there's things once he gets in space, he looks like a linebacker. And he's strong for his size as well, Trev. This is a big time football player.
Yeah, I love this kid's film. I watched a little bit of it with you before we hopped into the show. When he's attached, he like build wise, he kind of reminds me of what RJ Oben was at Duke before Notre Dame put some more weight on him. Like questions about like the length of his arms, not a crazy long athlete. They were both 6'3" guys. But when he's attached to the line, especially getting after the passer, that's what RJ Oben looked like at Duke. Yeah,
look at that strength. Like he just rocks this guy back. Just
man.
Now he's kind of the opposite. He knows how he's going to play. You know what he reminds me of? If I like the RJ Oben one, you know what else he reminds me of? Notre Dame used to have a lot of success with guys like this. When you think of Darius Fleming and Prince Shimbo and guys like that were really good pass rushers. They didn't fit that prototype size, but they played with great pad level, which he does. They had really good explosiveness off the ball. He's even better than they were at the same age. And those guys I know how to win. You think of the kid Nolan Smith from Georgia a couple years ago.
Yeah.
6'2", 245, but just super twitchy and off the edge. And that's what Zyron Four-Star is. But I love how he uses his hands, Trev. And here's yet another example. He does not let high school linemen get into his body very often. Look at that. Look at that ability to just block, destruct. And you got to think, IMG, they're not playing like bum teams. Like they're playing like legit football teams. This kid really knows how to play, Trev. Very advanced for his age. Love the athleticism. But he's kind of got it all. I think he's got a really good football IQ. I think he's got really next-level athleticism. He knows how to win. Like, again, this isn't against a Notre Dame caliber offensive lineman, but he knows what he's doing. Look at the setup. Use that club to get outside, get around the edge. Look at that bend. I mean, because a lot of guys – so what does bend mean? So obviously there's that right there. But if you can't bend, what happens is right here, you're going to get ridden outside because you can't lean in and underneath that guy like he does right there to level off your pass rush. And a guy that can't bend is just going to kind of get worked outside or come higher, and the quarterback can climb the pocket away from him. When you can bend, you can kind of get under that guy and level off your rush and come around the corner and really make an impact. Look at that. Oh, my goodness, that's impressive. This is a really talented football player. Somebody in the chat asked, how does he compare to Josh Burnham? He's not as naturally long as Josh was. I think he's more explosive athletically than what Josh was, which is saying something because you and I felt that Josh is a very good athlete. Here's Absolutely. The other difference between him and Josh. Josh played middle linebacker and quarterback in high school. We had to learn how to play defensive end. This kid has a better advanced pass rushing repertoire than what Josh Burnham had as a sophomore. Because, again, Josh was learning something new. This kid's playing defensive line. Now, Josh obviously got a lot better, and Josh was a beast the last 2 years. But this kid has a wider array of pass rush moves as a junior in high school than Josh Burnham had in 2023 in his second year playing defensive end. So this kid's got a lot of talent, Trev, a lot of talent. Fast hands, too. He's got pretty heavy hands. I think he'll need to continue to add some weight room strength, obviously. But he's got very fast hands. This is the kind of kid, when you think about how twitchy he is off the line, how fast his hands are, his change of direction is elite. You see that right there. Yeah. His spin move is ridiculous. Like this looks like linebacker film. This looks like a twitchy linebacker right there. When you think about the overall athletic package, Trev, he's the kind of kid that can just become an absolute edge nightmare and just have a variety of moves. And you just, okay, I'm playing a big guy that you know has got some long arms. Cool. Then here's what I'm going to do to beat him. Okay, I'm playing a really athletic guy. Here's what I'm going to do to beat him. You know, you're taking a wide set. Okay, I got something to beat you. Oh, you think you can ride me outside? Okay, I got something that can beat you. He's a very advanced football player on top of being very athletic. You know, so IQ there, athleticism there, natural strength there, football IQ, instincts, all there. I mean, other than I'd wish he was an inch and a half taller and maybe a little bit longer. I mean, but that I can live with that. This is a big time football player. Big time football player.
Absolutely. Would you say between the two, let's just play out a hypothetical here and say Notre Dame landed him and Abraham Cisse. Would Forstall come in as the higher ceiling initially, or higher floor initially,
yes,
because
floor,
of the
yes. Okay. Yep, higher floor, yes. Yep.
Okay.
I mean, he's probably their most advanced defensive end in years, as far as just knowing how to play the game. He really is. He knows how to play the game. Notre Dame hasn't gotten a kid like this in a while. A lot of their top defensive ends have been converted players or raw players that had a lot of upside, Isaiah Foskey's, two-way players, things like that. But you know, this kid comes in, he knows how to play. He can help you on your third down package right now. Like, meaning not right now, like as in today on March 4th. I mean, like when he shows up, like right now, you're saying, okay, how can we get Zyron Forstall into our pass rush package? And then we'll see what he can do after that. So no question. And I thought you were going to ask me a different question, Trev. I thought you were going to ask me this. I thought you were going to ask me if they get him and Abraham, if they get Zyron and Abraham Cisse, is that a duo better than the Rodney Dunham, Ebenezer Utade duo? And my answer was going to be, based on junior film, yes. Now, Rodney got better as a senior. Ebenezer got a lot better as a senior. So the senior part remains to be seen. But as far as like a duo, I would rank both of these guys higher as juniors than what I ranked Ebenezer and Rodney as juniors. Those guys both made big jumps as seniors. That's what I thought you were going to ask me. So somebody asked what are these kids rated? Sam, he's rated as a top 30 player by 247 and ESPN. He's ranked outside of the top 100. I think he's like in the 130s according to On3. So it's another one of their weird ranking ones. But here's the last defensive end we're going to break down, Trev, and this is Mekhi Brown. This is one of their most recent offers. Mekhi's from Connecticut, and I think he flew under the radar a little bit. Now he's kind of blown up. Now he's top 30 by Rivals, top 50 by 247. Is, you know, offers from Ohio State, A&M, Florida, Penn State. Everybody in the country is now coming after Mekhi Brown, and he's got some really impressive tools as well. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's some dudes on this board. You get one of these three guys, you got a stud. You get two of these three studs, you're recruiting as well as anybody. But Mekhi Brown is he's kind of a combination. It's going to sound crazy. He's kind of a combination of Cisse and Zyron Forstall. You know, he's got the size that Abraham does. He's got more of the advanced feel for the game, maybe than what Abraham had. He's got some of the twitchiness that we see from those two guys. Uses his hands really well. He's a really good football player, Trev. Really good football player. Love the combination. His size, burst, power combination is elite.
Yeah, it's exceptional. Good Lord. Yeah, I mean, his lateral quickness is exceptional. He's able to open up his hips, turn and run, kind of like that linebacker feel like you were talking about with Xavier Forstall. But he has the size of Cisse. I mean,
my dude's complaining about holds in the highlight film. I forgot about this. He did get held though. That's a great spin move. You keep going, Trev. Sorry, I just thought that was
no, you're good. I mean, it was just, that was kind of the complete thought, man. Like, he's just great lateral quickness, great feet, great lower body, strong hands. His pass rushing repertoire is a lot more advanced than what a lot of other juniors in high school are at this point. This kid's impressive.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the get off. The one thing I'll say athletically, he's a little bit more tight-hipped than the other two. I would say he's more of a pure edge guy. But for what you're asking a defensive end to do, I think he's got a really nice burst. I think that tends to lend him to playing a tad high, naturally higher than the other two guys, but it's not something that to me is a problem. Isaiah Foskey was that way. Isaiah Foskey is a little tight-hipped.
Yeah.
And he couldn't move laterally or play with the pad level that I think Zyron Forstall or Rodney Dunham or Ebenezer Utade can. And he was a heck of a player at Notre Dame. But it's an observation. It's not something that keeps him from being a stud. He's got the traits you need to overcome that because he's still good, there. It's just, but that burst, those hands are really top level.
Where is he from again?
Connecticut, Greenwich, Connecticut. Yeah, he goes to Greenwich Country Day in Greenwich, Connecticut.
Okay.
Yeah. Notre Dame's got some dudes from Connecticut recently, Trev. Last 5-star they got – actually, they had 2 offensive tackles from Connecticut in one class in Will Black and Matty Augustine. But, these schools are starting to produce more Division I football players, a lot more Division I football players. And they had another tackle that they signed from Connecticut last year in Charlie Tom. Yeah, Makai is a very, very talented football – without a doubt, a top 100 football player. Trev, no question about it. 5-star ceiling upside kind of guy.
Yeah, senior film is going to go a long way in determining that too, for sure. I mean, and that's not to say his junior film isn't impressive, but to your point, getting up to that 5-star ceiling, like what you would see from like some services, I could see him bumping up to that. But right now, for your rating scale, is that what you would say for him? 5-star upside right now?
Very clearly. I think the only question that I would have, look at the speed. The only question I would have is how high would he? And I haven't graded him yet. The question I'm going to be is, does he grade as a top 50 player now, or does he grade as a top 75 to 100 player now?
Sure,
that would be my question. That'd be my question. So we'll see. I love every time we don't say a word correctly. Everybody in the chat just feels the need to correct what we're saying. So yes, Greenwich. Excuse me. You guys happy now? Greenwich. Thank you. Can we get back to watching film? That'd be great. Thank you. Greenwich, Connecticut. So there we go. Because you guys had no clue what I was talking about until I corrected it. So anyway, that's what I like about Makai Brown, Trev. And you see it from these 3 players. You see what I'm talking about, right? Like, is the board huge? No. Is the talent at the top elite? Absolutely. And that's the key is there's players on the board for this to be an elite defensive line class again. But right now, we don't know who they're going to get. So the key is going to be close. You've got to close. If you can close, you're going to be in a great position. And we're going to find out here in the next few months if they can do that. But I love the board. And, I mean, KJ Green has film that looks like this. Ryan Jackson has film that looks like kind of what you're going to see from Zyron Forstall, just not as advanced. Aiden O'Neal has really impressive film. So those are just kind of the top 3 now. We'll watch some of these other guys down the road as we get closer to visits. We didn't want to go through all of them today on kind of a rundown show because we also wanted to get D-tackle, but the board at defensive end is really impressive. D-tackle, Trev, to me, give me minimum 2. I need 2. I'm taking 3 if it's the right 3. And I think Notre Dame is going to shoot for 3 in this class. 2 is what you need. 3 is what you want. That's probably a better way of saying it. And it's just about because of how well they've recruited to that position. And you also have to include now Chris Burgess in that conversation. You got Chris Burgess. You got Davion Dixon. You got Gordy Solstead in the 25 class. 26, you got Tiki Hola, Elijah Golden. Now in 27, it's about another stack in that class right on top of it. It's a loaded D-tackle class nationally. Notre Dame has to take advantage and land a big-time D-tackle class. 2 is the minimum need. 3 is, I think, what they want. Because they don't want to keep going to the portal for defensive linemen. They have no problem doing it if they need to, but they'd like to start developing just like they would at a lot of other positions. They've got a shot to have a great defensive tackle group as well. It just comes down to, can they get those guys? You think about the board, David Folo Run Show, Braden Parks, Marcus Fakatu, Montana Toe Lolo, Jamar Thompson, Tyler Alexander, some of the big names to know. There's some other guys on the board, Tavita Nonu, Joseph Buchanan's another name to know. There's a few more guys on the board, but I think those 6 are the ones that we're primarily going to focus on right now, and then we'll watch 3 of these guys. But to me, Trev, when you look at that Fuller Run Shoe, Braden Parks, Marcus Fakatu group, Part of me wants to say you just got to get one of them. But I'm sorry. You've been on Marcus Fakatu for 2 years, and the other two kids are from Chicago. You got to get at least two of these guys, if not all three. At least two, I'm good. I'm good. If you get all three, there won't be a better D tackle class in college football or in high school football next year. No team will assign a better D tackle room if you can get all three of those guys. And so, like, to me, yeah, I get you only need one to have a stud, and that's true. But when two of those kids are from Chicago and the other kid's been on your campus like 5 times in the last 2 years, I'm going to be greedy here. I want all three, but you need at least two of these of that group of players. And then there's, like I said, there's some other good players on the board too. But that group right there, you got to get guys from there, man.
Well, and some of that's a testament to what we talk about on the show all the time of closing the gap. Like closing the gap and having that gap officially closed is being able to clean up all three of these guys and bringing them back to South Bend to be Notre Dame football players. I mean, one of the things that I like about what they did in this transfer portal class is they brought in guys with multiple years of eligibility. They didn't bring in a Jared Dawson who was a one and done, or bring in like a Chris Smith who was a one and done a couple years ago. So it gives them a little bit of room to go big game hunting with some of these guys that you're talking about, you know, with Braden Parks, with Marcus Fakatu, with David Fuller-Runcho. So very excited to watch some of these guys on film. We were watching some of it earlier this week, and these players are exceptional. Very excited. And I'm with you. If they're able to go 3 for 3 and bat 1,000 with these kids, it'll be the best defensive tackle class I've seen them bring in at Notre Dame since I've been following the team. And that's a year removed from Elijah Golden and Tiki Ola,
which is the best D tackle class they've landed in over a decade. But I mean, that's recruiting, right? It's stacking those classes. And we're going to start with two kids from Chicago. And Trev, we've talked about this. Chicago D-line or defensive line is loaded. This might have been the best D-line in high school football last year, the one that Braden Parks is a part of. It's Braden Parks, who we're going to watch now, Cam McGee, who's a 2028 kid who's a star, 5-star already. And then they had another D tackle that I liked a lot named King Liggins, who's going to Illinois. And they're like, how'd they win a state championship? Gee, I don't know. Here's why. It's this D-line. And sometimes it's hard to tell King and Braden apart a little bit. King was a senior. Braden was a junior. He's 98. King, I think, is 88. So it can be a little hard sometimes to tell them apart, but Braden's a little bigger. But this is a big-time player. He's Chris Zorch's godson. He's been on the board forever. Miami's making a hard push for him. A lot of schools are making a hard push for him. He's a coveted prospect, and he's one that Notre Dame has to get. He has everything that they need. He's got size. He's got power. Yeah, Pete, he's at Brother Rice. He's got athleticism. He's got all the traits that you need to be a stud up the middle, Trev. And guys like that there aren't many guys like that, especially guys from Chicago. He's a big-time player. And I'll say this, too. He is vastly underrated. Some of the rankings I've seen for him, I'm like, I don't know. I know they're recruiting they're looking at the high school because they're looking at Cam McGee, but nobody has him in the top 100, and I strongly disagree with that. 247 actually is closest. They have him in the 120s. Okay. I think that's the lowest he should be ranked. This is a top 100 caliber kid to me. Braden is a really good football player. Good athlete, great size, powerful, and he's smart too. He knows how to play. That's the thing you're going to see. This is against Mount Carmel.
I was about to say, isn't this Quentin Burrell's high school?
I think so. Yeah, I think that was. Don't get distracted by number 5. We'll watch his film down the road. Dude. Okay, I promise. But don't get distracted by Cam McGee at number 5. Focus on number 98 because he's a legit big-time player too. But, yeah, I love Braden Parks, Trev. You just 6'3", 295, good quickness, good short area quickness, and then he can do this. This is the thing. He loves playing with power. Yes, he can spin, he can twist and do all that, but when Braden Parks is in his wheelhouse, he's playing with power. But he's got it all. Size, good athleticism, football IQ is very high. Talking to Sean Davis, a very humble young man, a very high-quality young man, great Notre Dame fit. He's everything that you want, and he's from Chicago. You got to make this happen. Right here is an example of the one thing that I'm first working on with Braden Parks. Technically, he tends to lift up a little too high, and some of his moves, he exposes his ribs. Like, you've got to be a little bit better with some of that, but still for a junior, he's fine. He'll be fine. But there's some technical things that he needs to work on, like a lot of young players do. But I love his all-around skill set, Trev.
Oh, absolutely. Very strong at the point of attack. He has great short area quickness and honestly pretty good change of direction for a junior in high school who's pushing 300 pounds. I mean, this is a very strong, good football instinct too. And he's a good football player, not just a freak athlete that's just one of the biggest guys on the team. This dude's film is so fun to watch for a multitude of different reasons. Also, sidebar, last time I'm mentioning Cam McGee, but the fact that both Braden Parks and Cam McGee are coming back to this high school on the D line in 2026 is kind of just not fair. Last thing I'll say, but man, this kid is exceptional.
Yep. I don't know how they give up touchdowns this year. I really don't with that D line. I really don't. But no, he's a really talented football player, Trev. Really like Braden Parks a lot. Like, just it's a nice close right there as well. There's a lot to like with this game. We'll watch a couple more clips of Braden, and then we'll move on to look at that. That's what I'm talking about, football instincts, guys. This isn't just a big kid that bullies everybody. Look at this. He sees, like, so here, let's walk through how he knows what's happening, right? So first of all, they try to chop him. And he says, nope, I'm going to stay down. Well, why are they chopping me? And where are the other linemen going? Okay, there's a screen over there. So, okay, football IQ, check. Right? We're already right now with right there, we're happy. Okay, good job. Good job, Braden. Then he does this. He leaps over the lineman to intercept the pass at 6'3", 295. Like, seriously. This is that right there is what separates Braden Parks from like just another good high school defensive lineman. Is he's big, but he's smart. And he likes to be physical, and that's what I really like about his game. Yeah, he's a good football player.
We'll add mossing right guards to his resume.
Yes.
In his recruiting profile.
There you go. Now, again, want to see him play with a little bit better pad level. That's something I want to see, but that can be corrected. I don't think it's a physical thing. I don't think he's like so tight hip that he can't play with better, bend. That'll be the thing to work on. So, yeah, really like Braden Parks. He is going to be back on campus. Let me pull up our visitor list at Irish Breakdown. I believe Braden has set his visit date. Yeah, he will be on campus again on March 21st. So he'll be there as part of that first open weekend there. Now, there's another young man coming from his high school that's a name to know on top of. We already talked about Cam McGee, who's an elite 5-star guy from Brother Rice. There's also a tight end that you guys are going to want to keep an eye on named Jack McNamara that Notre Dame is on as well. There's two really good Midwestern tight ends that Notre Dame is looking at. Jack McNamara from Brother Rice, and then Theo Schott, who's an Indiana kid. Actually, Trev, not that far from where you are. He's outside of Indy. Remember the kid we were talking about?
Zionsville.
Yep, Zionsville. That's the one I'm talking about. So right outside of Indy, correct? It's north side or south side? Which part of
the northwest side of Indianapolis?
Northwest?
So
okay.
from my apartment, it's probably 25-30 minutes.
So two really good football players, but also a teammate of Braden Park. So you can understand they're doing some really good things. Look at that move. Look at those hands. Look at the setup. So he sets the guy up, leans him outside, gets him to step outside, and then he's got that quick club to get inside. Boom, and get to the quarterback. That's a heck of a move right there from a junior in high school, Trev. Like, that's impressive. Yep, so that's Braden Parks. That's Braden Parks. So that's another one of the talented defensive linemen on the board. Now we're going to watch the other defensive tackle from Chicago, and that's David Fullerunshue. This is an intriguing player because he has just blown up, Trev, absolutely blown up in the last couple months. He is from it's St. Patrick, I believe, correct? I'm trying to find his info right here. Yeah, he's from St. Patrick, and he's become a big-time recruit. He wasn't really that heavily recruited early on, and now he's blowing up. He's ranked as the number 13 now player in the country from Rivals on 3, and he's ranked 79 by 247. ESPN hasn't even ranked him yet, haven't even graded him yet. He's a late riser, but he is a stud. 6'4", 285 is what he's listed as. He's going to be an easy 300-plus pounds at Notre Dame, Trev. Easy. But some of the stuff you're going to see from him on film, here he is playing defensive end. You're going to be like, wow. Another Chicago kid, another Chicago private school kid. Now you see why I'm like, dude, you got to get these two kids. This is a 6'4", 285-pound junior in high school that just did that off the edge against good competition. So I love the size, Trev, love the natural strength, but what really is the reason he's jumping, he has next level athleticism for a kid his size. Yes. And that's what really separates.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what? This clip is him running down on punt coverage?
Yeah. See that again. Yes, he's running down on punt coverage.
Good Lord.
Yeah, he's a talented player. But, just the change of direction here, Trev, that's the important thing, right? Like, okay, can run downfield, sure. But watch him kind of turn up right there and make that play. Like, that is some impressive stuff. Here's a great hustle play to the sideline, which shows his speed and length. Look at that. Look at that motor. I love the hustle. But look at the length, though. You can kind of see it as he's running. You can see them long arms churning. Then as he lunges out for the quarterback, great length. Great length, in my opinion. Very impressive player.
Yeah.
Very impressive player.
Athletically, he is exceptionally strong. Great change of direction. When they line him up on the edge, because I just love doing comps, there are times, especially with some of the bendy shows on the edge of the defensive line. Maybe it's just because it's fresh in my mind because I was watching his highlights the other day because we talked about him on the show quite a bit. It was like if Victor Abiamiri was like 285 pounds. Like man.
Yeah. Yep. Does stand up a lot at the snap, Trev. You see there's plenty of snaps where he can bend. I just think he's not as advanced as what Braden is technically. When that comes, his game is going to take off. It really will. Like right there, this is just him being better than the dude he's going against. That's not what you'd be teaching. You don't take on a block that with that kind of base and that stance, standing up that high. But he's just so powerful, he just chucks that defensive lineman or offensive lineman to the ground. Just boom, just no chance, and then gets to the ball. So I think he has a good feel for the game. He's just not as advanced as what Braden is at this point in time. But love the motor, and you watch game film and not just the highlight film, and you see the same thing. Great motor, like for a young kid with his size, like that kind of move off the line. There's a lot to like. Isn't there some pass catching film on this particular one? Don't we have a couple from him? Where they thought, or no, he was blocking. It was him blocking.
Yeah.
It was Cisse was the one that they were throwing right the ball to. Yeah. Watch this. Yeah. No, it's the other one where Michael Ower's a kid. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to see that coming up here in a little bit. That kid was about to get driven out of the stadium before he just took a dive in the end zone. You guys will see that coming up here in a little bit. We're not going to turn it off till we see that, but I mean, so he's got it all, Trev. Length, size, frame, athleticism. He can bend, power. This is it, actually, right here, where he blocks this kid. He's about to take this kid out of the stadium, and that kid just goes down. He's like, nope, I'm done. He's not going to take me to the track. Sorry. Yeah, it ain't happening. Like, this kid was smart because he was about to get driven back off into the 400, he's about to get taken to the turn of that 400-meter run. You know what I'm saying, Trev?
Yeah.
And he wisely went down. But all the tools are there. He just needs a little bit more coaching, but really impressive young man from the people I've talked to that have talked to him. Really impressive young man, great Notre Dame fit, and an absolute must get. Here's another guy that's about to drive out of the stadium. Guy blew the whistle. Come on, man, don't blow the whistle. So yeah, he's a good one, Trev. It's a big time player. You get him and Braden Parks in the class, and I'm thrilled. I'm absolutely thrilled. But they're not it, Trev. There's another big time player that's still very much on the board. Notre Dame has lost a little momentum with him just because of the coaching change. He had a great relationship with Al Washington, but obviously Charlie Partridge is going to try to get that back. He will be on campus this spring. He will most likely take a visit to Notre Dame. He will be on campus for the Blue Gold game, so that's obviously going to be important. And that is Marcus Fakatu, who is another absolute stud. I told you guys from the beginning when Notre Dame chose not to take a third defensive tackle in 27-6 class, and I told you part of that's because how loaded the 27 class is. Now you see what we're talking about. So Marcus Fakatu's from California. Obviously, USC is a player. Oregon's a player. Michigan is now a big-time player because he had a great relationship with that staff there when they were at Utah. It's a big-time kid, Trev. 6'5", 6'6". Some people list him as 6'7". He's listed between 280 to 295. He's got great size, great power. He's athletic. He's productive. He's smart. He really is the total package on the defensive line. Marcus Fakatu is a big-time football player.
Yeah, he absolutely is. I echo a lot of the same things that I said about these other kids. He's explosive. He has great short area quickness, really strong hands at the point of attack, but they're not heavy. Like, they're not strong and heavy. He has quick, strong hands. This defensive line class in 2027 is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
Yep. To answer a question in the chat, he was originally a member of the 28 class, and he did reclassify to 27, which says a lot. So what you're watching right here is sophomore film of Marcus Fakatu, not junior film. This is sophomore film, which says a lot about him. And then I've talked to some people that know him and know his family. I've never spoken directly with Marcus. I don't really do that anymore. Guys, Sean does that, and we're getting ready to make a hire here in the recruiting office at Irish Breakdown. But I also know some people in the industry that have talked to him. He's a lot like Kingston, and his family's a lot like Kingston's family. Just, great family, raised the right way, great manners, family is important to him and all that type of stuff. He's the kind of kid that you say Notre Dame fit. He's a fit at Notre Dame for the same reasons that like Kingston and, Drake Bowen, guys like that are great fits at Notre Dame as well. But he's also a big-time football player, Trev. Big-time football player.
Absolutely. And when we're talking about a kid that's out west, fit matters because you're talking about somebody that's coming across the country. But in terms of his physical tools, it's just
that's a Stephon Tuitt move right there, Trev. Like, the thing about him is he can play anywhere. He can line up on the nose and dominate. He can play 3 technique and dominate. And if you want to do more 3 down, you can pump him out into a 4-eye or a 5, and he can come off the edge. He can play on the tackle. He's got that skill set right now that he can really do a lot of that. Very talented football player. Very talented football player. Yeah, Marcus is a stud. There's no doubt about it. He's a top 50 player for me. And he's just getting started. He's still young. Like I said, he reclassified from 28 to 27. It's in this offseason. Actually, might have actually been in the – when did he do that? Was it after the season or during or before the season? I can't remember. I have to go back and look. Sure. It seems like it's been long ago, but there's things that have happened in January that I'm like, that happened in January? It feels like it was a lot longer than that because so much stuff has happened in the last couple of months. But yeah. So, look, you got these 3 players on the board. They all love Notre Dame. They also like other schools as well. You've got to close. You land 2 of these 3, and you've got one of the 3 best defensive tackle hauls in the country, in my opinion. You land all 3, and you've got the nation's best D tackle haul, and it's not close. That's what I think about these young men, Trev. Elite talent.
Absolutely. Well, folks,
so as you can see, and guys, real quick, and we didn't talk about Montana Toilolo. We didn't talk about Jamar Thompson, Tyler Alexander, who you watch film of. We didn't watch film of KJ Green at defensive end, Ryan Jackson, Aiden O'Neal. The reality is it's 2 talented boards. You've got to close on some of the top guys. Notre Dame just signed their best defensive line class since 2011 in the 25-6 recruiting class. You have a chance to have a class that follows it up that's just as good, if not better. You've got to do it. The players are on the board. You got to close. It's going to be a very big early test for Coach Partridge to show off his recruiting chops. And it's going to be a challenge because, kids had built relationships with Coach Washington, and now you got to build something new, but you got to get it done. The board is just too talented. And this is a great D-line class nationally and right in your backyard. You got to take advantage and have an elite D-line class. Has to happen. Has to happen.
Absolutely. Folks, that's going to do it for part 3 of the show here today on the Irish Breakdown Podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. But don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to wrap up today's episode with a really, really fun topic. But before we get there, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family, anybody that you know loves Notre Dame in college football as much as you do. But now that it's the offseason, the best way to stay in tune with all things Notre Dame football and the best way to support what we do here and to see more of these recruiting breakdowns, be sure to subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. All right, Brian, to take us home here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel, we're going to kind of widen the scope. We've talked about Notre Dame, we've talked about Notre Dame recruiting, offensive star power, but now we're going to kind of broaden the scope a little bit and talk big picture college football. What do I mean by big picture? I mean overarching view. This isn't about a specific team. This is more so about the state of college football, and we're diving into this TV deal conversation that's really the SEC and the Big Ten versus everybody else, and everybody's kind of putting in their opinions or providing different solutions. And so what we're going to do is we're going to provide a high-level overview of just what the overall debate is. What's the argument for the current state? What's the argument for pooling some of these resources together? And then we're going to kind of wrap it all up with what our overall thoughts are. So, Brian, I'll kick this over to you because I'm sure you're going to be able to do a much better job of explaining this whole thing than what I'm going to be able to do.
I'm hoping you can do some of that as well. But what we're basically we're at sort of I believe it's appropriate to say this. I think we're at an inflection point in college football. And a lot of things are going to need to happen over the next couple of years. Otherwise, the sport's going to suffer greatly. And it's encompassing in a lot of areas. The transfer portal, our players' employees or not, this crazy conference realignment, the college football playoff expansion, the Big Ten SEC trying to dominate the sport, TV deals, TV rights, player rights. There's so many things, rev sharing. There's so many things that are in front of college football that if they don't step up to the plate, we're going to have some issues. The encouraging thing is, at least in this debate, in a lot of the other debates, there's no leadership. There's no voice that I see that I'm like, yes, let's follow that guy. It was like, make Nick Saban the commissioner of college football. Why? What things is he advocating for that would somehow fix the game? What's the hard stances he's been willing to take? He'll say something here and there, but I need to see a lot more for him before I'm ready to just pump up Nick Saban as the commissioner of college football. And what's he the commissioner of? What entity, what organization? I'm trying to say, who are the people having real discussions about what we need to do? And at least when it comes to the TV rights, I do believe, and the revenue in the sport, I do believe there's some voices that are trying to step up and say, hey, we need to make changes. I don't agree with all of their points, but I think we're, at least for the first time in a long time, having a real discussion about, is the way we're doing it the best way or even the right way? And I think that's what this comes down to. And we're getting to this point. Donald Trump's going to have a college sports commission coming up here in the next couple weeks. You're going to have a lot of different people attending that. That's going to be a topic of conversation. We've got this debate coming between the SEC and the Big Ten versus everybody else. And the reality is that both sides are kind of doing some self-serving here. But yeah, that's okay. That's the commissioner's job of the SEC is to do what's right and what's best for the SEC, not to fix all the problems of college football. And sadly, I think Greg Sankey understands that a lot more than Tony Petitti does, because I do think Greg Sankey understands there's an aspect to where we can't go so far that help our league that we're just crushing everybody else. I don't think Tony Petitti cares about that. I just think he's trying to make as much money as possible. So we are in this debate. I felt like Cody Campbell, it's the big donor. He basically is people have called him the owner of Texas Tech football. Essentially what he is. He's not the owner, but he's the fundraiser. He's the money guy at Texas Tech. But Cody Campbell also is someone who is trying to change the game in general and bring about change. And so his side has brought up the argument that we need to pool all the revenue together. And some from his side, and I believe this is his view as well, is that there needs to be a governmental agency that sort of has control over how all this works. The SEC and Big Ten side say, hold on a second, we need to keep doing what we're doing. because this side won't raise more money. It's actually going to have less money, and we need to keep doing what we're doing, and the conferences can sell their own revenue. Well, of course, the SEC and the Big Ten feel that way. And no, none of these sides are commie. Stop, Chief. That's not what it is at all. But one side is saying, hey, no, let's keep doing the status quo. Why? Because it works for us. This is good for us. And we're afraid that if we go over here, that we're going to not make as much money, or even if we did make more money. So like if the Cody Campbells of the world are correct, the Big Ten and SEC are still going to make that kind of money. The problem is, so will the ACC, so will the Big 12, so will Notre Dame. And obviously they don't love that idea. And so they're fighting, obviously, for their point of view. The other side is saying, hey, look, we can't compete with those schools right now financially, so we want to change the rules to try to get everybody on the even playing field. I'm sympathetic to that point of view in some areas and not in others. And so that's what's going on here, Trev. So we want to kind of set the stage for the debate and make the arguments. And so let's begin with the new argument, which is coming from the Cody Campbell side. And then also there's a very well-written white paper by I think it's the AD or the president from Louisville, maybe like both of them together, that was in response to the SEC and the Big Ten commissioner. Why did the SEC and the Big Ten commissioners release their white paper? Because they know that what they want is under assault. And so they're trying to get ahead of it. So let's first set the stage for what Cody Campbell and some of his people are looking for and why and where this all comes from. Because there's a lot going on here. You know, there's the Sports Broadcasting Act, which Joe Mark talks about, which the FCC is now looking into for the NFL. There's been hearings on Capitol Hill already about that, where they're saying the NFL is kind of getting outside their authority to still have because the NFL was given NBA, hockey, Major League Baseball, we're all giving antitrust exemption. That's something college football does not have that they would like. The problem is, in order to get the antitrust the way that they have it, they have it because they have, one of the reasons they have collective bargaining because their players are employees. That is not the case in college football, nor do I think it should be. So it's a little bit different. So it comes down to that. We're here because, as we talked about the other day, just a quick rehasher, 1981, college football, you have the NCAA determines who's on college football. Then the college football, it was the CFA, College Football Association. They had everybody except, I don't think they had the Big Ten, the Pac-12, correct, Trev? I don't think they were part of it.
Correct.
1981, University of Oklahoma, enjoined by Georgia, sues the NCAA to say you can't keep controlling who's on TV. The top 60 or so teams would, be on TV. That's why you'd get a lot of Notre Dame. That's why you'd get a lot of certain teams because they were, bigger draws. So that gets, 1984, that gets ruled upon, and it prevents the NCAA can no longer be the ones that negotiate all the rights. Schools conferences can do it. Well, a lot of the conferences kind of joined together, and they were part of the CFA. Now, the CFA was an entity that was created in, I think, 1977, and then they started negotiating the rights, and they would determine who's on TV. So we saw more games, we saw less revenue. That was not working great. That's why the SEC, or that's why Notre Dame in 1991 really broke the back of the CFA and went and signed their own deal. Because they were no longer under the umbrella of the NCAA, they could now negotiate their own deal. Other schools could do that too, but they decided to do things as a conference. Then in, I think, 95 or 96, the SEC signs their own deal. And that's when the dam truly – so like Notre Dame took a sledgehammer to it and put a big crack in the dam. The SEC broke it when they signed their big TV deal, I believe was CBS back in either 95 or 96. The CFA lasted maybe another year or two, and it was gone. And they never had full control of all sports because the Big Ten kind of did their own thing, and the Pac-12 did as well. So essentially, from mid-90s on, it's to each their own. The SEC does what's best for the SEC. They get all that money. That whatever they negotiate, they get all that money. Big Ten does their thing, ACC does their thing, and that's where we are because certain leagues don't have the TV drawing power of other leagues. The ACC is not going to draw eyes the way that the Big Ten does or that the SEC does. Same with the Pac-12, same with the Big 12. That's why you see all this conference realignment. Why did the Big East die? Why the elite basketball league at the time? Because they started to want to get a piece of that football money. And then they stopped being a basketball league and they realized, we've got Miami, but we're still not drawing the eyes of the Big Ten and the SEC, and we just can't compete. The ACC, great basketball league. Basketball does not compete with football when it comes to eyes and viewers. It just doesn't. It doesn't bring the revenue that college football does. Same thing with the Big 12. Why did Texas leave the Big 12? It wasn't because they wanted a challenge of a better league. It's because they wanted more TV money. Because the Big 12, even with the Dallas market and all that, they just were not drawing the same drawing power, which means they couldn't negotiate the same kind of deals as what the Big 10 and the SEC could. And that's why they join those leagues. It's not about competitive balance or any of this other nonsense of why you need to join a league. It comes down to TV money. So obviously now you're creating an even greater gap between the haves and the have-nots. The transfer portal has somewhat changed that a little bit, but it's still, now it's just you get a big donor like Texas Tech has, and you're just going to so far outpace everybody in your league because they're still relying on TV money while you're relying on Cody Campbell plus the TV money. And that's why they can do what they can do. So it's creating a greater gap, which I kind of respect about Cody Campbell because he could not do this and just say, we're going to keep dominating the Big 12 because I'm going to make sure of it. You know what I'm saying? But I do think, and I believe he played college football, I believe. You may be able to check on that, Trev, but I think he played at Texas Tech. So these less powerful conferences are essentially trying to fight to get some of their power back because they gave away their power to the Big Ten and the SEC when it comes to negotiating for the college football playoffs. Don't know why they did it. I haven't studied enough on why they gave that up, but that's where a lot of this comes from. So you're making $40, $50 million a year while Big Ten teams are making $90 to $100 million a year. The other problem is Tony Petitti had made some promises to schools that have joined the league. They've gotten too big, and now they're struggling to make enough money to keep everybody happy. That's why they're trying to bring outside, private investment. Some people call it investment, some people call it private equity, but it's private equity. That's why they're trying to go out there and get that $2 billion for that because they've got demands to meet. The SEC wisely did not grow as big as the Big Ten, and they brought in like markets they wanted. They weren't kind of talked into bringing UCLA and Oregon and Washington when really all they wanted was USC. And they didn't bring in a Maryland or a Rutgers type of program just to get to a market. They've been a little smarter about it. And so they're getting more money per school in certain instances, or I shouldn't say that because the Big Ten has promised more, but they're in a better position to make sure everybody gets what they were promised because they don't have as many teams. And they have better programs in certain instances. So they've kind of come together in a lot of ways because they're the two drivers and they're basically now telling everybody else what to do because they want to now also dominate the college football playoff and make more money in the college football playoff. So not only are they getting more for their in-season TV revenue, but now they're getting more for the college football playoffs. That's why they want the guaranteed bids. And you're just getting this greater and greater and greater gap between the haves and the have-nots, not even as teams within leagues, but just between the leagues, to where if it keeps going down this direction, the ACC and the Big 12 are basically going to be closer to the American than they will be the Big 10 and the SEC financially. That's kind of where we are. Have I summed it up kind of appropriately on what the battle is, Trev?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about two separate sides, and one of them is fighting for an even playing field in college football from a financial standpoint. And then the other one wants to keep with the status quo, being the SEC and the Big Ten, where we're starting to see in all different patterns with the college football playoffs, with TV revenue, money share, revenue sharing, things like that. The Big Ten and the SEC want to almost monopolize college football to where it's like everything kind of runs through them. Like they want to be the drivers of it. And the powers to be have kind of allowed them to do that up to this point. But yes, as far as setting the stage goes, like really that's the debate. The debate is does everything get broken down into a collective pool where everybody can draw from it equally, like in the NBA and the NFL? Or is it do you keep on keeping on and the lessers to be die off, for a lack of better terms? And so that's really kind of the task at hand here. And it's definitely an interesting one. You and I were talking before the show, and it's like, I get the argument on both sides. Like, I understand that Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti have kind of been painted as the villains of college football. Some of it I can get on board with. Others, to your point that you said earlier, your job as the commissioner is to look out for your league. If I'm the commissioner of the SEC, one of my jobs is not like at the top of my to-do list, and the expectations of my job is to not also make sure that the ACC is doing well.
Correct.
My number one job is to make sure the SEC is doing well. So I understand that completely. But it's almost gotten to this point where it's like, okay, I get the argument on both sides, but there's a point where each side loses me. And that's where I have issues with, yes, people like to pick sides and what this debate really is.
So let's lay out as generally as we can the two sides. We'll begin with the side from Cody Campbell's side. Essentially what they're saying they want to do is to pool all 136 teams together and create an entity that will be on top of it, that will then negotiate the TV revenue that then gets dispersed equally. There's some, it's fair. Is that so quick as I can? So no longer do you have the SEC negotiating their own deals and then keeping all that money. They make $80 million a year. Big 12 makes their own deal. They can only get 50, and now there's a $30 million gap per year. Think about what that is over 10 years. You know what I mean? Like, that's a big gap. And so then you create that sort of change. They want to say, look, we're all going to make the same amount of money. Now, what I don't know is, will Boise State under this model make the same amount as Alabama? Will UAB make the same amount of money as Auburn? Will Troy make the same amount of money as Alabama? That's what I don't know. Or will the G5 get a lesser cut? Do they propose, like right now they're proposing for all 136, it'll be 138, I think, this year with North Dakota State. And I think there's one other team, Sacramento State, I think are both jumping. So that should jump it up to 138. What's the difference there? Do they eventually say, hey, look, this is just for Power Fives? That I don't know. Like, you guys can keep doing what you're doing, but we're going to put the Power Five under this umbrella. I'm not sure how that's going to work. And so that, like, those are things that I'm curious about. Also understand that these are business people that understand how to negotiate. They're not putting all their cards on the table. They don't want this until they're only asking for this. If they want something, they're asking for way more than what they want so they can negotiate down to what they want. Both sides are doing that. So keep that in mind when you think about this. I like the general idea of pooling the money together, as I've mentioned before. What I was concerned about was, well, how does that practically work? That's why, so the SEC, ACE, Big Ten wrote their white paper. Then the Louisville, I think did you look and see who that was, Trev, that wrote the?
It was like the chairman, like, of it's as a trustee at the University of Louisville and current chair.
Okay, so a trustee. So white papers are basically just reports. I mean, that's what we keep saying, but that's what they call it, a white paper, letting know what a stance is on something. So essentially, the SEC's counter was, that's unpractical. You can't compare a 136-team league to a 30-team league or a 32-team league. They had their counters. The Louisville white paper that was in response to that actually was revealing to me more of what that side seems to want. Their argument is this. And again, we're just trying to lay out the argument. We're not picking sides just right now, because I think there's things that I like on both sides and understand on both sides. What he said was, like, actually, it's not selling 136 teams to an entity. We're still marketing the Big Ten as the Big Ten, the SEC as the SEC. So it seems to me that it still is, if CBS wants this league, they can bid on this league. If this team wants that league, this TV network wants that league, they can bid on that league. That's how I understand it. But the money is all in here. That's kind of the model we've talked about, Trev, where like you're bidding to not host CBS and Fox and NBC. We're not bidding to host all 32 NFL games. They were bidding on 3 entities, correct? They were bidding on AFC, NFC, and Monday Night Football, correct? That's what it is. And then Sunday Night Football. So now NBC has Sunday Night Football. So they can have AFC or NFC. It's Sunday Night Football. Whereas I can't remember. I think it's CBS has the
AFC.
AFC, and then Fox has the NFC, and then what is it? ABC still has Monday Night Football. So ESPN, ABC has Monday Night Football. Correct. So there's 4 entities that own 4 parts of it. Then you start to have the streaming services that are now buying Thursday night games. So those can get anybody. But the Sunday, we've got the AFC, we've got the NFC. All those different packages. So now you've got 5 entities. Amazon, you've got CBS, Fox, ESPN/ABC, and NBC.
And
all 5. Who else?
And technically now Netflix.
But they haven't done anything yet, though, right? What are they doing now?
Netflix got like the holiday games, like the games on like around Christmas. Like they got some,
But all that money is being pulled together, and all 32 NFL teams get the same cut. So even though the AFC may be making more money currently than the NFC for their TV deal, and then when the Fox contract runs up and whatever, then they'll make more. And then it's just kind of like back and forth. Because I don't think they come up at the same time. At least they didn't used to be. I don't think they are now, Trev. They may be. The point is, Trev, is it all gets pulled together and all the teams make the same TV revenue. Now, there's disparities in revenue because we have our local markets revenue. We have ticket sales. We have merch sales. There's all things that can separate. So not every team has the same revenue. But as far as TV revenue, I believe they all get the same amount. Correct? So what they're saying is that's the model we want to take. It's actually we are still selling the SEC. We are still selling the Big Ten. We are still selling this, but we're going to distribute the money evenly. What does evenly mean? Again, as we got SA, this is what I don't know. And if somebody in the chat knows this, they can let us know. But like, does that mean that, again, that Troy makes the same amount as Alabama? If that's the case, that's not going to work. You know, can networks truly say we want this league? We're going to give you $1 billion over 10 years, but we want the SEC and the Big Ten, or we want the SEC. Can teams then have the freedom to go sign their own deals? That's another conversation. So can Texas be part of a league but sign their own deal? There's a lot of that stuff that needs to get worked out. But the point is, Trev, is the goal, ultimate goal, is to even the playing field from a TV money standpoint, like we see in all the professional sports. Baseball is a little bit different because baseball has more of their own local TV packages that don't exist in college football in the NFL. But NBA and NFL, especially NFL, it's everybody makes the same amount, basically. That's what the Big 12, the ACC, and these other leagues are fighting for, because they're saying in this era of rev share, we have to pay the same amount as they are, but our $20.5 million is a whole lot bigger chunk of our revenue than it is for Ohio State. Just off TV money. Hey, if it's a different because you don't draw as many people to your games, that's not Ohio State's problem. You know what I mean? That's not Notre Dame's problem. That's not Bama's problem. But the TV revenue part is the thing that they're trying to normalize. If you can just get that on the same plane, then then we can be more competitive in this era of revenue share. That's essentially where we're at. Whereas the SEC and the Big Ten, in all honesty, you're like, hey, what we're doing works. Look at the money we're producing. Look at the number of eyes that were on this game. Look at this. It's working. Why mess with it? That's essentially the argument that you have on both sides. Is that your read of it, Trev?
Yeah, absolutely. Summed up, that's how I view it too. And it's really just keeping with the old ways or doing something that benefits everybody. And that's big picture, the task at hand. That's what this white paper from Louisville, one of the trustees from Louisville, kind of breaks down, and points out fallacies in the way that the Big Ten and the SEC did some things. And then obviously the white paper from the Big Ten and the SEC points out some fallacies in the way that Cody Campbell and that side want to do things too. But by and large, I'm with you.
Fallacies by both, correct?
Yeah. Perceived, exactly.
Right, yeah,
exactly. And so this is a very, very interesting conversation because I have a lot of thoughts on this, and I know we're going to talk about like kind of where we stand here in a little bit, but overall, this impacts all of college football. So I'm very interested to see what direction this ends up going in because I truthfully, and I know I kind of take kind of the bystander stance on a lot of some of these topics of like, hey, just kind of keep with the status quo, or I'm impartial. But this one's interesting because it could change like how teams are put together year over year. Especially once the amount of money starts getting divvied up, depending on where it goes. But again, it's you summed it up well.
Yeah. People are saying none of this can happen until 2030 anyway. That's not necessarily true. That's why they're trying to go to Congress. Because if Congress steps in, then they can do things that can create a change, right? Like, so, well, the TV deal for this league doesn't come up until when? Doesn't matter, because what they'll basically say is your TV contract with ESPN doesn't change. It just means that money is now no longer controlled by you. So there's ways around it, but at the same time, this isn't something that they're thinking is going to be enacted for the 2026 season. This is about figuring out a pathway to where whenever it goes into effect, 28, 29, or 30, that we at least know we have to hold water until then. And so somebody says, doesn't Congress have better things to do with their time? Well, not really, no. This is an important thing. I mean, this is a $1 billion industry that affects hundreds of millions of American people and things that they do, which is why they had the initial act back in 1961, which is why there was a Supreme Court case in 1981. Because what's happening right now? Teams are suing leagues and the NCAA, and where do all those things end? They end with court cases. Some, can go as far as the Supreme Court, as it did in 1981 when they sued, and eventually ends up in the Supreme Court. So clearly, this is a federal situation. And also the fact is, because it impacts all these schools, a lot of them are state schools, which means they are under the umbrella of the state government. You just saw Mississippi, for example, pass a law saying they won't tax NIL money, which is an absolute crock of crap. Think of all the hardworking blue-collar people in the state of Mississippi, and they don't get those tax breaks. They should. I think my stance on income tax, period. It shouldn't be a thing. But you've got this state setting a rule that's different from this state, which sets a rule that's different from this state. And now you've got this competitive imbalance that are being created by state governments. It's sort of like, what do they call it? Like when things affect multiple states, now the federal government has to get involved, right? So you've got to set rules that because this trade happens over these states, now you have to set a rule that is more of a federal rule because it's not just something that happens in the state of Indiana, right? State leadership in Indiana can set whatever they want to do for their state taxes. And then if we don't like it as individuals and as a society, we can vote people out, and that can be part of things that we demand. Federal government can't tell Indiana whether they can or can't have property taxes. That's something that Indiana can control until they pass a law, federal, constitution that changes it otherwise. So it's basically because it affects all these different states, then yes, it falls under the federal government is the only entity that can kind of bring it all together. So yes, this is some commerce clause. Yes. Interstate commerce, Tommy. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Interstate commerce. So that's essentially why these states are looking for help from the federal government. This is the kind of thing they should be involved in because of the financial impact it has. This is a big business. This is a $1 billion business that's being, gosh, Trev, almost what states don't have football? Alaska?
Yeah. And does Vermont?
Vermont and New Hampshire and Maine have FCS football. They don't have D1 football. Montana doesn't have a D1 football team, but they have one AA football team. University of Vermont, the Catamounts, I think is what their nickname is. They have football. New Hampshire's got football. Maine's got football. Connecticut's got football. Rhode Island's got college football team. So it literally affects everybody but Alaska. Hawaii's got a football team. New Mexico's got two, Division I football teams. So all those states have. UNH is where Ryan Day and Chip Kelly are from. They coached at New Hampshire together, I believe. I think Ryan Day was a quarterback for Chip Kelly at New Hampshire. So the thing that concerns me, Trev, is I don't love the idea of pulling all of it together if it's going to be 138 teams. You're going to have to create a system in which there is a difference between FBS and like the P4 and the G5s. You have to. I wonder if I think all sides eventually would like the idea of a Power 4 break-off. I think that has to happen at some point in time. When it comes to TV money, the only way that can happen is if there's a federal involvement. I just don't see how the Power 4 teams can just decide on their own to do that without getting sued by states that aren't part of this. You know what I mean? Like now all of a sudden New Mexico wants to sue because now they're getting cut out of the business. Now Connecticut can sue because they're getting cut out of the business. Delaware can sue, whatever the case may be. That's the thing is I don't know how it works with 138 teams unless there's going to be, this is how much G5 makes. This is how much Power 4 makes. And so those things I don't have the answers for of what they want, what their proposal is. You kind of have that now. I mean, all those teams have TV deals anyway. The Mountain West is getting ready to sign a TV deal or just signed a TV deal with like CW and I think it was like Fox. I think it was one of the ones. And it was like, several that they signed with. So, those are things that I'm curious about, Trev, is how does that work? How do you make that work? I'm sympathetic to that. How can you guarantee that this is going to create new, more revenue? I think the argument that was laid out by the guy at Louisville was, here's how we're going to make more money because it's pulled together. It's this, that, and the other, but we're still selling the leagues, and you can't have it to where you can go negotiate your own deal. That's what they're saying. So I don't know how a lot of this is going to work, but I do think that what is going to have to happen is two things. I don't want status quo because I do think there's an improper balance that I do think creates an unfair advantage. Like there's certain things like, what I hate, Trev? I hate when things are done to try to bring down the top echelon. I hate that, right? Like don't create rules of saying like, you can't do this because we don't want to have to work as hard. I'm going to say you can only meet this amount of hours as a football team. You can only practice this much because these group of coaches over here don't want to have to coach that many hours. Well, if you don't want to coach that many hours, fine. Just, you don't have to coach that many hours, but you're going to be 2-10. What that to me, those type of rules I hate. What I don't hate is something where, hey, we got a great staff, we got a great this, we got a great that, but because this is where our TV market is and that's where their TV market is, we're in an unfair advantage. That has nothing to do with how hard we work and what we're willing to invest. Like we would love to have that, but because of this, we can't. That's where I think I do feel that we should somewhat level out the playing field. It's kind of in line with my stance on NIL and rev share. I think a rev share should be split up between every player on your roster evenly. Everybody gets a cut of the rev share. You may be the star, but you're the scout team, but you're all part of the team. Rev share split up between everybody. NIL is however much you can make. And that's kind of how I feel TV deal should be. TV deal, in my opinion, should be everybody's kind of on the same plane. Beyond that, if you make more money on ticket sales than that team, good on you. If you make $5 million more on merch sales, then good on you. If you make X amount of dollars because teams are willing to sign your your apparel deal where you're making more money on your apparel deal than somebody else, good on you. That's your brand power. But the TV part is a little bit different for me, Trev, for a host of reasons. So I think what you're going to have to do is at some point in time, you're going to have to need some sort of come together moment, whether it's, hey, we still want to negotiate our own deals. We still want to have a role in who we sign with, but the money then goes to this entity that then disperses it to everybody evenly. So ESPN wants the SEC, they can still have the SEC. If Fox still wants Big Ten, they can have the Big Ten and they can pay whatever they want for it. We don't want to have AAC games. We don't want to have Mountain West games. We just want the Big Ten. Okay. What do you want to pay for it? Here's what we're willing to pay for it. All right. Sign deal. But then that money gets taken and it gets dispersed amongst all Power 5 teams. That's how I think we ultimately need to get to for the TV revenue aspect of it. So I am sympathetic to the other side of this, but I also see some of the holes that the Big Ten and SEC sees. But but what if we do this and as an entire sport we're making $100 million less dollars, or $500 million less dollars because of this? I think those concerns need to be answered before we can ever go down the road of pulling it all together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think after reading the various white papers and what the Big Ten and the SEC have proposed and what Cody Campbell's proposed, the disconnect is what you just explained. The disconnect with, Cody Campbell's side and I think it's like the SAFE Act or whatever that they're looking to amend, like the 1961 sports broadcasting bill or something.
Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961.
Yeah. I think the disconnect is that side is like, hey, you could still sell yourself as the SEC, and the SEC and the Big Ten are like, yeah, we know that. We want to make more money. It's not the name power; it's the financial.
Well, their counter pretended like they didn't know that, and honestly, I didn't necessarily know that until the Louisville white paper said, no, that's not how it works. We're not selling one entity of 138 teams. We're still selling the Big Ten as the Big Ten, the SEC as the SEC. I didn't necessarily know that, so now I have a better understanding of that. Will it work? That I don't know.
That's
my
hang up.
If we sell ourselves for $80 million a year per school, then we should get $80 million per year per school. That's kind of what they're saying. What the other side is saying is actually, if you do this and we go down this road, within 10 years, you're going to make more than $80 million a year. It's just so is Iowa State. So is Rutgers. So is Vanderbilt. That's kind of, Vanderbilt and Rutgers bad examples because they are in those leagues, but so is Iowa State. So is Texas Tech. So is Clemson. So is Florida State. That's their argument. And so I think the SEC is saying, nuh-uh, we don't think you can do that, number one. Number two, we don't necessarily want that. Let's be honest. I don't think the SEC is only concerned about whether or not they're still going to make their 80 or 90 million a year. I think that's part of it for sure. I think the thing is, but what if this does work? That might actually be worse. Think about it, Trev. It might be worse for the SEC and the Big Ten if Cody Campbell's argument is factual and turns out to be true. Because now, yes, we're making $100 million a year, but so is everybody in the ACC. So is everybody over here. I think that's where it gets a little bit trickier.
From a fan standpoint, I would get very sick and tired of the incessant whining from the SEC because you already have, now that you have the ability to pay players, we've already had to hear it's like, oh, it's a different ball game now because they basically just can't sit there and hoard talent and pay them under the table. Now the argument's going to shift to, we're making the same amount of money as, Wake Forest. What do you want us to do? It's just, it's the incessant whining from this that would come from the SEC and upper echelon Big Ten teams would get incredibly exhausting.
I look at it like this, Trev. They whine and cry all the time anyway. So at least this way we can have something that's somewhat, at least the system is better. They're going to cry about, we only get, think about what the Big Ten has won 3 titles in a row and their commissioners crying about, we need more guaranteed spots in the playoffs. You know what I mean?
Right.
Come on.
The biggest thing with me on both of these sides and where the Louisville white paper side and the Cody Campbell side lose me and like you said, at the end of the day, they're all businessmen and they're negotiating down to get the deal that they want to. And I understand that. The issue that I have with that side that I just can't get on board with is them trying to sell me on this pipe dream that college football is able to do this just as easy as the NBA that has 30 teams. But that's, again, it goes back to the part where it's like, we just don't know. So that's what's hard to formulate a complete opinion on it. But
yeah, and
I
that's why I
just
don't necessarily know if I call it a pipe dream. I'd say, okay, that sounds good, but you need to lay out very clearly how that's going to work. And I don't know that the argument they've made yet is overly compelling, because it better be very compelling for me as a Big Ten SEC team to say, okay, we're jumping on board with this.
Sure.
It better be pretty darn compelling, and so that's like, in this is, are you telling me that as the University of Alabama, we're going to make the same amount of money as Troy? I don't think so. Because now we're in a situation where we're bringing in all the money and it's being redistributed to these teams that don't do what they need to do, or have no ability to generate revenue to like. I think I'm somewhat understandable of the ACC Big 12 argument. I'm not as susceptible as like, okay, MAC teams should be getting as much as Big Ten teams. And that's what I don't know, and no one has really explained that to me.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Trev.
It depends on the team. Like that's like looking at it from a conference. I get why big picture the ACC and the SEC should make the same amount of money. That I'm sympathetic to
on TV deals only.
Yes, on TV deals. But then my mindset kind of shifts when you start talking about individual teams, even within the Power Four. Like it'd be weird to me to think that Arizona is going to make the same amount of money as the Texas Longhorns. Like that's just where I have trouble connecting. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. Like I get it. Like for it's weird, I know. Like, but for the conferences, I get it and it makes sense. But then when we're talking about, it's like, yeah, Rutgers is just going to make the same amount as Clemson, and it's like,
but it is the same as in each conference though, because Vanderbilt's not the reason that the SEC got the deal that they got. Kentucky's not the reason that the SEC got the deal that they got. Bama is.
Sure.
Auburn is, Florida is, Georgia is. Well, now it's saying instead of looking at teams within a league, because like don't we hear all the time from Big Ten teams, we need to kick Rutgers out of the league. We need to kick Maryland out of the league. They're not carrying their weight. And why are we having to make all this money to send to them? It's the same exact argument. Now it's just going from conference to conference instead of team from team within a conference. It's the same argument. Not everybody's going to pull their own weight. But in this particular area of TV distribution, there should be a level of everybody makes the same. That doesn't guarantee success. We see that in the National Football League. You've got to spend the money wisely. You've got to actually, and there would need to be some things of like, hey, if you're getting this money is going towards this. Like this isn't something where the president gets a pay raise or gets a brand new $500,000 desk, or you're now allowed to go hire professors or whatever based on this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like that there has to, a certain percentage of this money has to be spent on college sports.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like, because that's what's going to happen. It's like in the National Football League. Why are some teams cheaper than other teams? Because their owners tend to be cheaper. It's part of the reason. The other part of the reason is because they don't bring in as much extra revenue as another team. The Cincinnati Bengals aren't selling as much merchandise as the Dallas Cowboys. So but I'm like, hey, but that's the breaks. Be better, get more fans. You know what I mean? Invest your money on your football team, win more, get more fans. So you're still going to have the haves and the have-nots, but at least this way, the system gives, like, there's certain teams, Trev, that would love to do what they need to do to compete for championships. They just don't have the money to do it. And this kind of thing could allow them a more level playing field in one key area. And the reason I say that is because it's a playing field that was created imbalanced. And I don't think it has anything to do with, well, you didn't work as hard, you didn't try as hard. I'm in a state of 5 million people, and your capital has more than that. There's nothing like, how do I compete with it? It's not that I did bad recruiting and I wasn't willing to invest the resources into this. It's, you're in Texas, I'm in Nebraska. Like, You know what I mean? Like I can only have so many of these things, TVs that, eyes that I can go on. I think one benefit to where if they did do this, even if it was a power four break off, the other thing that would be a benefit, and this is ultimately selfishly why I would like to see it done, is I think this would be good for the game as well. Because we would see the Big Ten would go back to being 10 teams, 11 at the most. You'd see Maryland back in the ACC. You'd see Texas back in the Big 12, or potentially maybe back in like a Southwest type conference. You'd see the sport go back to smaller, more manageable conferences. Because if I don't need to be in the SEC to get the TV deal, then there's no need for me to be in the SEC. I'm going to stay over here, make the same money, and save $3 million next year on travel because my teams in LA don't have to go out to Piscataway or out to, Ames or out to Madison or out to East Lansing anymore.
Sure.
And so that's one good thing is you get rid of these insane, stupid conferences where the Southeastern Conference has teams in Texas and the Atlantic Coast Conference now has teams that, border on the Gulf of Mexico and the Pacific Ocean. You know what I mean? Like, it's stupid. You've got 4 teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference who literally are on the Pacific Ocean. Like, what are we doing here? You know what I mean, Trev? It's like, that's done for one reason and one reason only. And that's not good for student athletes, Trev. It's not, people are like, all these students, they're not real students. They're taking online classes. Well, yeah, because every other week they're making some trip from Palo Alto to the East Coast where their soccer team's gone all freaking week because they have to play back-to-backs in order to do that. Notre Dame goes out to the West Coast and they spend an entire week out in the West Coast because they got to play Cal and Stanford back-to-back because you're not going to go to Cal one week and then go back there again the next week. And so what are they going to do when in the sport that plays during the week? Like, of course they're going to take online classes. Otherwise, they're not in class at all. So I feel like you fix this system, then that is better for the well-being of the student athletes. And that was the most hilarious thing that was in the white paper for the Big Ten and the SEC. These other entities aren't doing what's best for the student athletes. That is rich coming from Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey. Super rich, but that's kind of where I'm at. You get back to regional football. You get back to smaller conferences, which then what? What do smaller conferences do, Trev? You now have to play better non-conference games because you won't have enough games on there. Big 8 in the Southwest Conference come back. Guess what? We only have 7 regular season games. Got to figure them out somewhere. So there's a lot of things like that I would like to see that I do think would be good for the game. I think it would be good for young people to have these insane, massive leagues go away. The Big East can come back. The Southwest Conference can come back. The Big 8 can come back. The Pac-10 can come back as a real league. There's just a lot of different things that I think would make a lot of sense. And maybe the Pac-10 can't come back because they've signed new deals and they've got to, they go back to being the West Coast Conference or something like that. Whatever they were called before they became the Pac. I think wasn't their original name called
like the
West
Pacific?
Coast Conference?
It was like the Pacific Coast Conference.
Pacific Coast Conference, yeah. But anyway, so I think ideally that's what I would want. You just have to give me a better plan for how you separate Power 4 versus the G5. Sure. I need a better plan on who is the entity that's in charge of all of this. Like I don't want one entity selling all these deals. I do like the idea of the different conference commissioners still having a big say on negotiating those deals. And then they have to then report those deals to the entity. I think that creates a little bit more competition, because that's just my opinion, but somebody can make a case and prove me wrong otherwise, but that's where I'm at. Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Bring back the old conferences.
Yeah. I mean, if it's to improve the game, then I'm all for it because I think college football's at a very interesting spot right now. And if it improves the game, then I'm all for it. I'm afraid that this is going to be one of the ideas that's like great on paper, but then just applicably, it would be way
Sure.
too hard to get done. That's my concern.
Well, and part of that's because the unknown, Trev. I mean,
Yeah.
neither of us really know. I mean, look, you're a married man. I'm a married man. There are certain things that we can do with our spouses, and when it comes to decisions with our family, that it's like, hey, I'm willing to take this chance because it's worth it, and the risk is manageable. I'm not going to lose my house because I do this.
Right.
But then you start making a decision where, okay, the benefit could be this, but if it doesn't work, I'm going to lose my home. I'm going to lose my ability to provide for my wife. It makes it a whole lot harder to just take that leap. When I was a college coach and I was single, it didn't bother me moving every other year. Didn't bother. That's part of the business. When I got back into coaching with my wife, and the first time I was like, okay, I'm going to have to move again. It was like, dude, I don't want to do this. That just was my personal thing. Other coaches make the decision to do it, and that's fine for them. Their families understand. My wife didn't marry into that. She didn't marry me knowing that was going to be something that we were going to do. So you have to make those decisions. Like, do I really want to do this? And that's where we kind of are as a sport. But my thing is like, you're going to have to do something because the direction we're going now is not sustainable either. Yes, it may be working today, but it's just not sustainable. And if they don't fix it now, then it gets to the point where you worry that the damage done is irreparable, and you may not survive. This notion that the college football as we know it is just always going to thrive. Sure, maybe. I don't know that you can guarantee that. Because unlike the NBA and Major League Baseball, you don't have the international markets to tap into when your American audience goes away for a while. And same, like, it's just, to me, that's a concern that I have. They're not the NFL, and the NFL's seen its fair share of dark days as well. But if you don't fix it, man, yeah, yeah.
I get you.
And again, say, well, one entity needs to do it. I don't necessarily agree with that. That could work, but I still think that the conference commissioners making their own money can work. Because here's the thing that the SEC is saying: hey, we as a sport won't make as much money if we go to this pool it all together thing and one entity does it. Okay, cool. We'll go with your way where the sport will make more money, but we're still going to pool it all together. It's the same principle, but like, this is kind of where I'd kind of call the bluff of the ACC and the Big Ten. Well, if your concern is the sport won't make as much money, cool, then we'll still let the conferences negotiate their deals, but it's going to get split into this. Even if it's something where it's not the same, you get to keep 60% of whatever you negotiate, and the 40% goes over here into the pool. Something like that, you know what I mean? And gets distributed. So it's like, fine, we'll call your bluff. You can still negotiate your own deals, because if you think individuals negotiating their own deals is how we're going to make more money, and one entity doing it is not, based on this and this and this, cool, you go negotiate whatever TV deal you want. Big Ten, you go negotiate whatever TV deal you want. Then you do that. And somebody says, why would the TV network want that? Because they're getting what they want. We want the Big Ten. We're paying this amount of money for the Big Ten. I don't care what the Big Ten does with their money. We want Big Ten games. We want SEC games. That's what we want. And if you want them, then you have to negotiate with Greg Sankey to get it. You have to negotiate with Tony Petitti to get it. That's okay, fine. But it's still going this way. Because do you think the ESPN is going to be upset if they are negotiating with the SEC, but they don't have to have Vanderbilt games on anymore? Or, Arkansas games on anymore, because now the SEC is back to the old school SEC with 10 to 12 teams that you actually want. Actually, Vanderbilt would be part of that. You think the Big Ten is going to be upset because the Fox is going to be upset that they've now owned the Big Ten, but they don't have to deal with Rutgers anymore or Maryland anymore? You know what I'm saying? Like, cool. So that's why they would do that, because for them, they're still getting what they want. CBS does this, Fox does this, NBC does this. They all do that for the NFL. Somebody said, would you give up Notre Dame's independence for this? I kind of feel like the whole point of what we just said is, because if you sign this deal, there's more incentive to be independent. You don't have to be in a league. If Miami wants to get back to being an independent that plays all over the country, they can do that now. They don't have to be in a league. That's the whole point. If a team wants to pay for Notre Dame, they can pay for Notre Dame.
I'm asking this because I genuinely don't know, but this could factor into just kind of, I guess, what side I would be on or how I view this. Are bids like for TV networks like based on viewership? Like if some TV network is bidding for the ACC, like we want the ACC, is the amount of money they're willing to give based on like the viewership of the conference? Like how does
viewership,
that,
which ties into ad revenue, so like if it's why you make more money on, you charge more money for a Super Bowl ad than you do on a week 4 game between the Packers and the Bears. I mean, it's still a big game, but it's like that game's going to have more eyes, which means the ad revenue is greater. If this team gets 100, this league gets 100 million, views a week, and this team gets 50 million views a week, then look at our show. So one of the things that works for Believe is because we draw the number of eyes we do, they can then sell our entity. It's like, hey, you want to be, you want to get in front of this many eyes and pay this amount of money, then we got to get you an Irish Breakdown because they do this, 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 and this. You're only willing to give that? Cool. Then maybe this partner over here is better for you because this is what they're doing.
Sure.
So that's kind of my thing, Travis. It's based on ad revenue. It's based on viewers. It's based on how many people are going to watch, because that's ultimately where TV makes their money, right? That's what it comes down to. Right. It's how does a view turn into dollars? How does me watching a game turn into dollars for the network? What's the it's the advertising they can sell for those games. That's pretty much where it comes down to. Now, schools make money off of this, concessions and tickets and stuff like that.
Ticket sales, parking.
Yeah, if I can promise you as a brand, hey man, you want to partner with us, cool. You give us this amount of money in ad revenue because we can promise you that you're going to get your eyes in front. You're going to get your brand put in front of X number of millions of eyes next year. Right?
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's where it's at. So the whole point is you wouldn't need to give up your independence for that. You would be able to, in fact, if you want to be independent, you can be independent just because you're going to make the same amount of money. And if it's less for everybody, then, that I don't know that really necessarily impacts Notre Dame. Would I give up Notre Dame's independence if that was needed? As a Notre Dame fan, no. As a college football fan, yes. If it's the thing that ends up being best for the entire sport, yeah, you have to look at it that way. Is it best for Notre Dame? We'll see. We'll see. And the whole thing is, this isn't a Notre Dame argument because the TV stuff doesn't hurt Notre Dame. The TV money doesn't hurt Notre Dame. I'm not on the side of Notre Dame can't compete with the Big Ten and SEC because of TV money. That's not a problem for Notre Dame. It's a problem for Iowa State. It's a problem for Texas Tech. It's a problem for Baylor. It's a problem for BYU. It's a problem for Clemson. It's a problem for Florida State. It's a problem for Duke. It's a problem for North Carolina. It's not a problem for Notre Dame, which is why they haven't joined a league yet. And being in a league in this pool means nothing. The Big Ten doesn't necessarily become more valuable because if we want Notre Dame, we can just pay this amount for the Big Ten and then also pay this amount for Notre Dame, which is what NBC just did. They already had Notre Dame. They also wanted the Big Ten. But they didn't want the Big Ten entirely. They just wanted a piece of the Big Ten. CBS wanted a piece of the Big Ten. Fox wanted a piece of the Big Ten, but nobody was going to pay that amount of money for all of it. And then there's different tiers. Well, we're paying this amount and we expect to get this game every week. Why does Fox get the, big noon kickoff every week? And I forget how the process works, like how they pick the games, but like some weeks I think NBC gets first pick and then some weeks Fox, I think is kind of how it goes. I'm not quite sure how that works, but I think there's some kind of picking system. A Big Ten fan could maybe explain that a little bit more. But that's how the process works, big picture. So I don't know that it really affects And that's why the eyes matter. You know what I mean, Trev? Like, that's why, okay, you're producing an average of 15 million views a week. This team's, this league is 5 per game. This team is 15 per game. Then I'm as a TV network, I'm going to want that because I can sell advertising for that, which means more money overall. And that's where it comes down to. Like, if I'm the SEC, I'm not going to want to sign with some network that isn't a proven entity because they can promise us all they want, but you don't have the infrastructure in place to promise us that.
Right. That makes sense.
So, yep. Yeah, Chief, I'm in the same boat. I thought that there was I think Fox has some sort of primacy, but I think that there's like some sort of system in place. I'm not quite sure how it works because Fox gets the noon game, but I don't think they always get first dibs. But I'm not 100% sold on that. I'd have to go look and see what that is. I was reading something about it a couple years ago, a year or so ago. I'm not sure how that works. So ultimately, Trev, I don't know that I'm on a side yet. Here's what I don't think either side is necessarily saying this is the only way it's going to be. I think they're both laying out, this is where we're at. This is what matters to us. Now let's negotiate something over here. Because neither side to me is going to get everything that they want. There's going to have to be some sort of negotiated, but you got to start here. Like if I'm going to hire a guy and say, hey, look, man, I can only pay $50,000. Okay, well, I may start off and say, okay, 50 is the most I can pay, but I'm going to see if I can offer him 42 and see if he takes it. If he does, great. We have a little bit more of a buffer. If he doesn't, then I have some room to negotiate to get to 50. That's not good enough for him, then, hey, man, this isn't going to work for you. You know, so I think they're setting their initial positions, and then like any negotiation, you end up working to a point where you're both comfortable. This side may win more than that side, but as long as they're both comfortable, then we come to some sort of agreement. That's where
that makes sense.
It's a complicated thing, but that's the thing. A lot of stuff has to get worked out. Like what they're both proposing now is not what either one's going to end up looking like. It's going to be something that's different. It's just, will it be more in this direction or more in that direction? And that's what we don't know.
Excited to see where it ends up. That's for sure.
I think it's why it would be smart for them to figure something out before Congress gets involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like figure something out, then go to Congress for protection of it. You know, like that's what I'm hoping that we see. The Power 4 teams come together and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. You know, and that way we don't become a government entity. Because I don't know that like the NFL has government protection. The concern I have for this is they want a government entity to be in charge of all this. And that's the part that I really don't like. But what entity do you create?
Yeah,
that's what I don't know.
That's the biggest thing. Like it's just a path of like one would take more legwork, but I think would be better for the game. But then the other one's the status quo, which that's going to end up fizzling out eventually anyways. Like you said, the finished product is going to look a lot different than what's being proposed right now. So I get that.
Mm-hmm.
I get that completely.
Yep. Somebody asked real quick, how did the Notre Dame Ohio State game end up on ESPN instead of Big Noon Kickoff? That was before that deal went into play. I think their deal didn't start till 2023. I think they signed that deal in like summer, fall of 2022.
Yeah.
22 is their last deal with last year with ESPN. I don't believe their new deals went into play for till 2023. That's why that game was on at night. ESPN still had the Big Ten primarily at the time.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
That's it.
Well, folks, that's going to do it.
I feel like I'm talking myself into circles as we're going through. It's like, man, this is complicated.
Well, folks, that is going to do it for us here today on the Irish Breakdown podcast, brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Be sure here in about an hour, the guys are going live on IB Nation Sports Beat for their midweek mailbag, so you're not going to want to miss that. 5:05 start time. Brian and I are going to be back tomorrow with some more offseason content coming your way. But on your way out of here, be sure to hit that like, hit that subscribe, hit that notification bell. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and family. Anybody that you know loves Notre Dame and college football as much as you do. But as always, the best way to support what we do here is subscribe to the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So until tomorrow, that's Brian. I'm Trevor. We'll see you back here very soon on the Irish Breakdown podcast.